The prophet considers the leaders of the children of Israel who came after Moses when they said to one of their prophets, "Set up a king for us and we shall fight in God's." Oh, hello everyone. Welcome to episode 65 of the Next Big Pod. I'm joined today by Dewey from Boxing Wales, Paul Webb, who should just be back, and Carpy. We don't know where Brian is. He's been suspended from Twitter, and he might have gone off the rails a bit in the last few days. He hasn't been talking very much on WhatsApp, so he may jump on, or he may not. We don't know.
He's been on a permanent bender since McGregor won. He was followed since the amateur days.
Hashtag find Brian.
He's big into his UFC, isn't he?
He's watched the McGregor Aldo fight.
He's watched 3 fights now.
No, he's only watched that one, which is 13 seconds. That's the amount of MMA knowledge he has. Yeah, he's been in WhatsApp kicking off.
And he watched the highlights of the fight on Saturday, to be fair.
No, he hasn't even done that.
He hasn't watched the highlights. No. He just read about it.
He woke up.
Speaking of, just a quick note on McGregor. If anyone did see it, did anyone notice that Bruce Buffer messed up the scorecards?
Yeah, it runs in the family.
Yeah, I just wanted to drop that in there. It's not exclusive to Michael or boxing.
How old is Bruce compared to Michael? He's younger, isn't he, I think?
A fair bit younger, I think.
I think he's 10 years. They're stepbrothers, aren't they, or half-brothers?
Yeah.
They didn't know each other until later life.
I think his hair's quite a bit younger than he is.
I was thinking, Buffer was all right until about 5 years ago, and he's really gone off the rails. Maybe Bruce has got he's got early dementia.
Michael Buffer, WCW days, that was peak Buffer, that.
You know how much? Here's a question for the listeners. Whoever's got the chat open, first one to answer gets, I don't know, an MVP.
Listener of the day.
How much money has Michael Buffer made from trademarking the "Ready to Rumble" catchphrase?
Isn't it like? Can I answer this as well? I want to be a listener.
You can have one guess, but if it's wrong, it goes to the listeners.
All right. Is there $100 million?
Sorry.
Is there
300 million? 300 million.
More than that.
300 million.
Yeah, I think it's about 300, 350, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I meant to say. Yeah.
Hey mate, it's all come from the Ant and Dec song.
He was one of the first ones to sort of pioneer that, and I think at the time, trademarking sort of catchphrases in that way wasn't really done. But I think in the mid '80s he did it. So like before he was even a household name, really. Very clever.
Apparently, he learned everything he knows from Mark Burtis. So Mark must have tipped him off on what to do.
And John, what's his name? McDonald? I forget his first name.
John McDonald.
John McDonald. He trademarked the phrase "fight night," so he's made a lot of money off that as well. But anyway, let's start with. Should we start with the Olympic stuff? Where do you want to start, Dewey? Have you got anything you want to kick off with?
Yeah, fuck AIBA first and foremost. Where do you even start? The first week, I really enjoyed the first week, not just because I won a bit of money almost every day, but the first week was really enjoyable. There were a few, like you get those Colombians, don't you, who, I'm not stereotyping now, honest, but you get those like South Americans who are really tasty, but they tend to burn out as the tournament goes on, and that's what happened. But there wasn't really any bad decisions. There was a few I disagreed with. Even though Paddy Barnes was well under par, I thought he did enough to win the second and third rounds. And there was an Australian who beat a Pole. I think it was something Jackson, whose name escapes me. That was another decision which I disagreed with, but it wasn't a robbery. And then we get to when it matters, and some of the scoring was just beyond belief. I've got such a sour taste about this Olympics, and it also, for me, it started when Bhatti from Thailand fought Nikitin, and it wasn't even close. The first and second rounds, he won them, by a mile. And I quite like Bhatti. I can remember he fought Andrew Selby in the World Championships about 5 years ago, and I've always seen his name pop up. And he is really talented fighter. He's the one who dumped Kez Asfak out. And like I say, it wasn't close, and that decision went that way. And I thought, naively hoping, fingers crossed, that it's a one-off. And from there, it just got worse. The Levitt and Tishenko one is really bad. If you get a chance to watch Tishenko in the World Championships final, which he won, he didn't deserve that either. But this wasn't even up for debate. People always reference the Roy Jones robbery in, what was that, 88 in Korea. I genuinely think this is up there, on par with that. There's an argument that Tishenko could have been stopped in the last round. He was certainly dropped. I think it was like a 1-2 as he was leaning over. He kind of landed, on his knees with his hands on the canvas, and the referee didn't even give the knockdown. And then the very next day, Nikitin again is fighting, and I can remember tweeting in the morning saying, I hope that after last night's controversy, that will be enough to ensure a fair contest, and it wasn't. And they were so brazen about it. It was so obvious that it can't be incompetence. It isn't incompetence. That's not what's happening here. And then we go to the semi-finals. The Croat, whose name escapes me again,
Verjovic.
Yeah, who fought Tony Yoka from France. That was a really bad decision. And again, it's not. To me, they weren't debatable rounds. They were clear rounds. And if you read the AIBA rules, 10-9 is a close round. 10-8 is a clear round. I probably only saw 5 10-8 rounds the whole tournament. So the scoring wasn't at any point enforced properly. And I'm not tolerating this thing that they're confused, that they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, I wanted to say that.
You'd get some fights though. So sorry, Sam. I'll wrap up now. You'd get some fights where Richie Woodall would spend a whole round or rounds justifying the scoring by saying that they're scoring for aggressive boxing. Well, what happens with the Joe Joyce fight then? He spends a whole fight on the front foot. He clearly won the first 2 rounds for me, and he didn't. One judge didn't give him a single round. I do love a conspiracy theory, but I appreciate most of them don't make sense. What I'm really suspicious about is Tony Yoka fights in the ABP. AIBA won the ABP to replace professional boxing. They want to take over with that. So I think it looks better for AIBA to have gold medalists from the ABP. There was no way Tony Yoka won his semi-final and final, and I'm really suspicious about everything. And what makes me more suspicious was after the Michael Conlan controversy, AIBA said that they sent home 6 or 7 judges. And then it emerges the next day that all the judges that worked on Levitt, Tishenko and Conlan Nikitin are still there. In fact, the judges who never appeared after that were the 7 A-star judges and refereeing judges. Mike Bassey is one of them, the British representative. And the ones there was a Sri Lankan, there was Michael Gallagher from Ireland. The ones basically that had robbed Levitt and Michael Conlan stayed there for the remainder of the tournament. Rant over. I think it's really suspicious.
I actually thought that the Buddy fight you mentioned earlier, I thought that was a worse decision than the Conlan one, to be honest. I do think there's an argument that Nikitin maybe won the last round against Conlan, maybe. That was kind of a close round. I thought against Buddy he clearly lost all 3. And I actually thought, although Levitt was the worst of the tournament by far, I don't think there's any argument that he won any of the rounds. I didn't think that there was really any argument Yoka won a round last night. I think it reminded me a bit of the Trout Canelo fight. Do you remember the last couple of rounds when, because of the open scoring, Canelo knew he'd won if he stayed on his feet, so he didn't really engage and he was moving away a lot, and Trout was coming forward and trying to be aggressive, and Canelo was showboating as if to say, and I remember the commentators giving him credit for his defense, but you just thought, well, he shouldn't really get credit in that situation because he hasn't got to that position fairly, and Trout knows that he's like 4 points down with a round to go. And I think Yoka was celebrating going into the last round, wasn't he, yesterday, knowing that he was up 2-0 on at least one of the cards. I think he was up. I think the other 2 had it
2-1.
No. I think they had it even going into the final round, and then he was.
No. One had it even.
Yeah.
Both needed a knockout, didn't they?
Oh, and two had him 2-0 up, right?
No, one had him 1 up.
One had it
one
even,
him 2 up.
2 had Joyce 2 rounds down.
Okay, yeah. So he basically knew, if I stay on my feet and don't do anything stupid here, I've won this. And I remember Woodall sort of giving him credit for evading the punches, and you just think that doesn't make any sense, because the only reason he's got the liberty of being able to just defend and evade is because he knows that he's somehow, how he won that first round. I have absolutely no idea.
Joe Joyce said something. I think he was alluding to the fact that it might have been dodgy when he said he finds it weird that someone can celebrate in a fight where Joyce feels like he's dominating. Like, why was Yoka showboating in a fight everyone, apart from them judges, can see he's losing?
Yeah.
Sam, I've got to
Does he
say,
already know something?
Yoka's personality-wise, he didn't come across great in his medal fight. So against the Croat, he was, there was an element of showboating, and then he came out, which is quite rare for amateur boxing. He came out in the in the interim between the semi-final and the final, slagging off Joe Joyce, which you really don't get that in amateur boxing. So I think there's an element of just Yoka's personality.
There wasn't. Dewey, I noticed that as well. During the medal ceremony, Yoka was sort of smiling and putting his arms around the other guys, the silvers and bronze winners, and there was no mutual sort of respect. They were just ignoring him completely. And I saw Joyce and Hergovich shake hands and sort of give each other like a fist bump or whatever, but they ignored Joker, and he was sort of in the middle grinning from ear to ear like he knew something the others didn't.
Well, Paddy Barnes said to us last week, like this time last week, he said that the French 91 kilograms will win, and the bird in the, what was it, 48 to 51 she's in, she'll win.
Yeah, his fiance.
He said that they'll both win. He said put money on them because they'll both win.
We all said it going into the final, didn't we? A mate texted me last night who occasionally watches boxing, and went, "Are you watching the heavyweights?" I just put it on, and he went, "This French guy looks quite useful." And I think it was maybe showing his highlights from earlier in the tournament, and I was like, "The French guy will win on points, regardless of how the fight goes, because he's the favourite of the judges." And after the first round, when my mate was sort of texting me saying he almost had him knocked out in that first round. And he did, didn't he? I thought he knocked him down. It wasn't ruled a knockdown, obviously, but I thought Yoka went down because he was hurt, and he was wobbly, and he barely threw a thing. He was covering up for the second 2 minutes of the round. He hardly threw anything. And then when the scores came out that it was 10-9 across the board to Yoka, then you realise, or no, sorry, it was 2-1, wasn't it, in the first round? But you realise, okay.
I think the first one was 10 across the board, mate.
To win. Sorry, Sam?
The first one was 10 across the board, I think.
Oh, was it unanimous?
The second one was 2-1.
But that was the weirdest thing, because to me the first round was the most clear Joyce round.
Well, you know straight away the robberies
aren't. That's a 10-8 to Joyce, because he had him all over. It reminded me of the last round. Do you remember Garcia Peterson, the last round, when I was trying to argue at the time that was a 10-8 for Garcia, for Peterson, even though there was no knockdown, because Garcia was just on the defensive the entire round, and he barely threw anything, and he was just trying to survive. And Yoka was surviving in that first round. It was crazy. And the way Joyce came out was, to me, it looked like a guy who knew, I have to knock this guy out or I'm not going to win, right? He was just throwing all sorts of punches. I've actually got the punch stats up.
No, I don't like using punch stats, because you can use punch stats to justify the other way as well.
No. I just meant to bring them up.
You get a feel for who's winning the fight.
No, but I meant to bring them up to show that Joyce threw 120 punches around. For a super heavyweight, that's a hell of a lot, right?
Yeah.
He threw 360 punches in 3 rounds. To me, that is not his usual style. That is a guy who knew, I have to knock this guy out, or who suspected, I have to knock this guy out to win. Yoka threw 146 punches. So Joyce has thrown over almost 2.5 times more punches. He's landed 112. Yoka landed 49. So he's landed 2.5 times as many punches. The gap was even more striking than I thought watching it, because I was thinking, okay, Yoka's covering up quite well here. He's landing the occasional jab, and I think he did land a couple of clean punches in the end. But that was when Joyce was, Joyce was throwing 10 punches in a row because he knew, I have to knock this guy out. And then Yoka would sort of clip him with a couple. But I thought it was, if you look at the Conlon-Nikitin stats, sorry to ramble on, but Conlon did the better work, I think, and definitely deserved to win the fight, in my view. But the punch stats were actually quite close in terms of how many each guy landed. And you could argue that Nikitin was a bigger puncher. But for Joyce to land almost 3 times as many punches, and one judge to not give him a single round is just, you can't be that incompetent, especially as that judge had scored some of the preliminary fights completely fairly. I remember saying after a few days that the prelims, it was going really well and there weren't any robberies. And then someone pointed out, well, yeah, that's because there aren't any medals on the line yet. And I thought, yeah, it's a good point. I hadn't thought about it that way. And then as soon as the medals kind of came into...
It was before that, it was the
quarterfinal
stages, they started getting a bit dodgy.
Yeah. The first 3 or 4 days I thought were really good. And I said something like, this is a real change from London. But then obviously... I was sort of fooled to an extent. Sorry, Paul, what were you going to say?
No, I was going to say the problem with the IBA conspiracy is that there was no real patterning to it. People were saying, oh, it's a Russian thing initially, oh, it's for Russian fighters. And then it was suddenly this idea that because the French guy's fiance won the gold medal, that they'd make it so he'd win. I'm not saying that it wasn't, I'm not saying the judging wasn't poor, but I'm saying that there's no pattern to what happened. There were just occasional fights at different stages of the tournament. Obviously, it was exemplified sort of more in the medal matches that we noticed it. But the biggest issue for me is how they score the fight. It's not so much what happened with the bad decision.
I think my issue with it, Paul, was that you had let's take Nikitin as one, who clearly lost his final 2 fights of the tournament and then had to retire injured. He clearly lost to the Thai lad, and he clearly lost to Conlon. Then you've got Yoka, who definitely lost to Hrgovic and Joyce. Definitely lost both those fights. So you've got the gold medalist who lost to both the silver and bronze guys. And then you've got Tishenko, who arguably lost all of his fights. I think he had 4 fights. And all of them, 2 of them he definitely lost. The semi and the final, Levitt beat him so clearly. Worst robbery in 20 years probably at the Olympics, apart from Joshua Sabon. But Tishenko arguably lost every fight he had in the tournament, and you just think, well, that's not a coincidence. Someone is pulling the strings behind the scenes for that guy. And it's maybe France thought this is our best medalist. This guy's a super heavyweight. He could be a star. I wouldn't be surprised at all if there was someone sort of leaning on the judges behind the scenes to say, it would really help us if this guy could do well in this tournament.
Shep,
no, I mean go on, Jay. I was going to say the France thing's quite an interesting one because obviously France has had over the years a real mixture of good and poor amateur sides, and they've come away from the tournament with 6 medals. They're sandwiched right with the normal sort of powerhouses of Cuba, Kazakhstan. I think the Uzbekistanis came top overall, but they had the French side had a very, very strong tournament, and that's my only sort of thing with Olympic boxing. I watched a lot of the tournament. I watched as much as I could of it around work, and there were a couple of standout guys for me that I enjoyed watching and people that I think look forward to. But when I look along that list of gold medalists, I don't see a single one that will make an impact as a professional.
No, exactly.
Duzmatov is quality.
But if you look, okay, so I'll go top. So Tony Yoka, will he turn professional? I don't believe so. Tishenko,
he said he will, but there's whether
professional.
Yeah, Tishenko. After very tough tournament, I'm not sure how old he is. But I thought he was a little bit older. And then obviously you got the Cubans, La Cruz, Lopez. They're not going to be doing anything. Ramirez, not going to do anything. The one guy I quite enjoy watching.
Just on Ramirez, he fights in every WSB away fixture.
And
I
goes
don't think
home.
it's a coincidence. I think they're sort of giving him the opportunity to leave.
Yeah, but it's with Cubans, obviously, as you know, it's always an interesting one whether they choose to or not. Obviously, the Uzbekistanis that won the gold medals, I think there was 3 of them. Will they turn out? And that was the thing for me. Like I said, normally I come out of an Olympics and I think I'm looking at future stars or future world champions. I've come away from this, and from a British point of view, I've really enjoyed watching Boatse. I thought he came from not obscurity in the build-up to the tournament, but he certainly wasn't one of the names that were being talked about. I think he was exciting to watch. Obviously, we all know Joe Joyce is going to turn over. But take on away from the UK, apart from Shaka Stevenson, you look down that list of medalists and you point out guys that you think are even going to turn pro or let alone make a serious impact as a professional.
Well, Duzmatov's already turned pro. He signed with Golden Glove South Africa.
Yeah, the South
And
African. What's
he's
Hecky
quality.
Butler's promoter, isn't it? What are
Yeah,
they
he's
called?
quality.
Paul, the ones that impressed me were obviously Levitt impressed me a lot, and
Hold on. Press pass. Mute yourself.
we got the echo. Okay, yeah, that's
Yeah.
better.
You're not
Paul,
talking.
in answer to your question, I agree. The French got a lot of medals, but I didn't see any exceptional fighters from within their team.
I thought that Sophie, I can't even say his name, the lightweight.
Sotomayor.
No, the French lightweight that lost to Conchao.
Oh, Sissoko?
No, it's like Sophie Umiha.
Sofiane Umaha.
That's the one. I thought he had a really good tournament. Beat Salamod. Stopped Ruin wrong. Can't remember who he beat in the semi-finals, but I'd like to see him as a pro.
There were definitely some guys that I thought were quite impressive. I even thought that Conceição for Brazil was quite impressive. I thought he was really gritty, really determined. Not the most skillful guy in the tournament, but I thought he was well worth his medal. The guys who impressed me, Paul, were Levitt, like I say, who really, we should class as a gold medalist. To be honest, he's quite clearly the best guy in his division.
Shep, Kazakhstan Olympic Committee, whatever their official title is, they've given him a bonus as if he did win gold. If you get silver, his bonus was going to be $150,000, but it's good. They're giving him $250,000.
Yeah, and I think some of the bookies paid out on him, didn't they?
Paddy Power did.
Yeah,
they paid out on Conlon to win gold as well.
I know also he was visited the day after by Mr. Ryabinsky from Russia, so I think you could see him turning over quite soon. The other one who impressed me was that Yelusanov, the Kazakh welterweight, who I thought won the entire. He clearly won all his fights in pretty much second gear, and I think he's quite a long-standing pro. I think this was his second Olympics. I don't know if he'll turn over. I've got no idea, but he really impressed me. I thought he was a really, really smooth sort of boxer puncher, bit of power, lovely foot movement. But he's the guy who I look at and think, okay, that guy could make some waves as a pro. I would be excited to watch him. But I look at a guy like Yoka, and you just think, could he be like? Is he another David Price? A big guy who can't really take a punch and is very protected. Is he above Euro level? To be honest, I don't even know if Joyce is above Euro level as a pro, and he beat the shit out of Yoka.
After Joyce's first fight, it sounds really harsh, but there's very little skill there, but he is very effective with his attributes.
Yeah, and he's clearly got a very good engine for a big guy to be able to throw the way he does. He's almost like a pressure fighter as a super heavyweight, which is incredibly rare.
If his chin's top level, he's going to go quite far because he could take people into deep waters.
I think he does have quite a unique style, which
the heavyweights now, they haven't got a tank, have they?
If he does turn over, he's got to get a move on though. He can't at 30 years old. He can't be spending 17, 18 fights knocking people over.
If he turned pro and his debut was Dillian White, I'd pick him to beat Dillian White because Dillian White is shit.
Yeah,
it could be though. His debut could be that fast. His debut can move that fast because he's had 17 WSB fights. He's only lost to Usyk and a Cuban in his first year. So, practically like 15-2.
You'd really, really hope that he wouldn't spend the next 18 months fighting, journeymen like fucking Leg and Gary Cornish and people like that. And you'd hope that, let's say he signs with Hearn, I presume he will, that they'd actually build him up quickly, and it wouldn't be a fucking Luke Campbell, Tommy Coyle situation.
Well, Hearn, he'd want to get Josh
I don't think
as possible, wouldn't he?
I don't think the age thing's really a matter anyway. I mean, heavyweights these days, it's a completely different game.
Ortiz is 56, isn't he?
Exactly, and you got fucking Vlad at 40 odd, and Vitaly still fucking people.
What they're claiming Savon was like 26 or something. No chance. There is no way he's 26. I think I was like, he's 35 at least.
I think you're all on the Olympic thing. Maybe you're all putting too much weight in the fact that the importance of a gold medal. I think it's more of a marketing ploy rather for a lot of boxers rather than a measure of their skill. I mean, a lot of great boxers, hardly had any amateur career to speak of itself, and a lot of them obviously didn't even medal. So I think that using it as a marker of skill is not really a.
Charles was saying this the other day. He was saying the people that haven't won a gold medal, it puts something. It puts like the bit between their teeth, and it makes them better than they would have been if they won the gold. Perhaps if Floyd won a gold, he might not have been the fighter he turned out to be, if you know what I mean. Although he's obviously still immensely talented.
Yeah, he wouldn't have taken so many risks as a pro.
It depends who you've got.
Shut up.
I suppose it
Brian's coming on, he's raging.
I suppose it depends who you've got as a promoter and what they do with you. I mean, if they know you've got the talent and they want to rush you through, then you're going to get pushed through anyway. I mean, with Lomachenko, he had the 2 gold medals. Is it a market employ, or was it just the fact that he was obviously so fucking brilliant anyway? I don't think the gold medals mattered.
Well, Rigo's got 2, and it's done him no favours whatsoever, has it?
And also, what was within? I think didn't Rigo beat Willie Casey in like his 5th fight or something? Like he was already sort of travelling, and it wasn't Casey like European champion. I know he's not.
Yeah, he fought
not amazing. And he was knocking out that. I think he beat Rico Ramos, who was a world champion, in like his 8th fight or something like that. And you think, if you're good enough, then rush him on. Like that guy, like Levitt. That Levitt guy. What's he? A light heavy, I think, or would he fight a cruiser?
That's cruiser and net heavyweight. 90.
I'll tell you what, cruiser is just getting better and better, isn't it, as a division? But
I would cut down, wouldn't he?
But stick that Levitt guy in with someone like BJ Flores tomorrow. Do you know what I mean? He'd beat the shit out of it. So. Or a guy like Shumanov, he'd easily beat them. So yeah, I think hopefully
that's the good part about the new it's reverted back to some of the old ways, but this new style of Olympic boxing, it's so suited to the professional ranks now, and the WSB and all the other tournaments that they've had without the headgear, and the fact that it's done on 10-point mass system now. There's no excuse now. They shouldn't be saying, they've got to learn the pro game, they've got to learn the pro ways and the pro experience. I mean, yeah, sort of, they've got to get some rounds in, learn a 12-round pace, but even the WSB's 5 rounds, that's a huge step up. They should be starting off straight away with, Lomachenko did a 10-rounder, wasn't it, or a 12-rounder?
Yeah. Alex, you're bang on there.
Because Ramirez, wasn't it, who fought Mares like 6 months ago, and they were saying that was a good win for Mares, so that shows you level he entered at. Like, he was a legit sort of gatekeeper, and he knocked him out in like 3 rounds or something.
If a fighter has a season in the WSB, even if they just have like 4 or 5 fights, they'll have, assuming that they've not been knocked out or knocked anyone out, they can turn pro with 25 rounds under their belt then, and it is exactly the same as pro boxing. No head guards, no vests, smaller gloves, and day before weigh-in. So there's no need for the likes. Like look at Andrew Selby, for example, fighting the 8-rounder on his debut and for the British title in his 5th fight. So there's no need for the stereo. What we usually see, which is 10 4-rounders and easy, against journeymen and easy fights. And one thing I'll say just before I forget. What I really didn't like was after the Joyce fight, which I think it was just a completely wrong decision. Everyone was rationalising it on the Conlon fight and on the Butti fight and the Levitt fight. Just because one is a worse robbery than another doesn't excuse the one which is slightly less of a robbery. I think the fact if we didn't have any of the other fights and we just had Joyce, everyone would be absolutely outraged.
I think all of those fights we've mentioned could stand alone, and people would say, yeah, that's a terrible decision. Do you know what I mean? You don't really need to.
But because there's been a couple of them, though, I think the Joyce one was like downgraded.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And obviously, to be a worse robbery than the Levitt fight, you're talking Roy Jones levels, aren't you? It would have to be such a shocker, just blatant corruption. So that was never going to happen again. I think, surely even like the AIBA must have been watching that Levitt fight sort of with their head in their hands, thinking, "Fucking hell, are we going to get away with this?" Like,
but they do
he's
get
been out on his feet for 2 rounds, and all the judges.
They will get away with it though. That's the problem, and there's no accountability because no one will check up on this. The media don't give a toss. They're not going to say, in 4 years' time, no one's going to care about Levitt or Joe Joyce or anyone like that got robbed 4 years ago. They won't even remember any of that. Media don't give a toss.
Well,
And
Bunsen,
they hide
Nishimuro-
behind the line. Judging is very subjective. That's all they need. Judging is very subjective.
So what did boxing give us at the Olympics as a sport? If I'm the Olympic Committee, I look at it and I got this: 2 guys arrested for rape, numerous corrupt judging officials, alleged, but numerous corrupt judging officials. If I'm in the IOC, they've got enough problems as it is without having a sport like boxing making their lives harder.
Paul, boxing, it would be perfect, wouldn't it, if Aiba were given a kick up the arse by being thrown out of the next Olympics? But it's not going to happen because Dr. Wu is on the IOC committee.
I think he's been removed.
No, he hasn't.
No, he was there.
There's so many conflicts of interest like that, aren't there, with the Olympics? I know what you mean, Dewey. There's so many examples of that where it's a guy who's basically acting as his own judge and jury. It's just ridiculous.
And to be fair, that's not. Look at all the other sports. Within the Olympics. Look at athletics for an example. The amount of doping, the amount of in the 100 meters alone, the fucking drug cheats that are fucking rampant in that, and still allowed to compete. They're not going to chuck that out. They're not going to chuck boxing out because there's a few dodgy, not dodgy, blatantly corrupt decisions. It's all going to stay. They're not going to change their minds because they're all in on it. I think that it's rotten to the fucking core.
I saw something, I think it was in the Times the other day, that out of the 30th, the top 30 fastest 100-meter runs ever, everyone at some point in their career has failed a test apart from Usain Bolt. So, we aren't the only sport that is rotten.
Yeah.
But it is so frustrating. We're so powerless. Nothing's going to change. Everyone will stop watching amateur boxing for the next. They won't watch the Europeans or the World Championships or whatever, and then we'll come to Tokyo 2020, and it'll be another 4 or 5 blatant robberies, and we'll all be just as frustrated over again. And do you know this thing about Aiba have removed the appeal process? Well, they've never had a proper appeals process. The old one was shit as well. You could only appeal if the referee had missed an infringement and not given a public warning to take 2 points off. If the judges had scored the fight completely wrong, you couldn't appeal on those grounds. So Aiba have had it sewn up for a long time. It just so happens now that they are beyond blatant about it, and we're all so powerless.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. That it's not that we're angry that sort of mistakes are taking place, because mistakes happen all the time. It's the fact that there's absolutely no recourse from anyone. There's no recourse for the fans. There's no recourse for the fighters. There's no recourse for the committee. Essentially, it's stitched up so that the guys who are sort of, whether they're corrupt or whether they're incompetent, for the sake of argument, let's say we don't know, but there's nothing that can be done to punish or to ensure it doesn't happen again. We have no recourse, and that's what's so frustrating.
The immediate statement after Michael Conlan's claims, which I fully support, was show us the evidence. It wasn't, we'll hold an internal or I wish it'd be an independent investigation, but we're never going to get there. They didn't even say we're going to hold an internal investigation. They've no motive, they've no reason to investigate themselves, and the reason why is because they know they're corrupt. I think Dr. Wu had, what was it? It was like basically essentially the freedom of Russia or freedom of Moscow from Vladimir Putin 12 months ago. So they're hand in hand with the people who we know. We look at the state-sponsored doping in Russia, and they're hand in hand with these organizations who are doing that. The head of the Irish Olympic Committee, I don't know if you guys have seen. Obviously, we've all seen that he's been arrested for ticket touting, but there are plenty of photos with him at dinners with Vladimir Putin. It's such a high-level corrupt a corrupt situation. It's never going to be fixed, and I don't think people care enough about Aiba to do anything. Whereas, boxing compared to FIFA and football it's not it's a drop in the ocean compared to the public interest in something like FIFA.
Is it not worse?
People just don't care people just don't care generally enough about boxing. I can remember a while ago trying to do some research. Do you remember the Porter Brook fight and the controversy about the drug testing for it? And I was trying to figure out exactly what whether Porter had been tested, and I was trying to find out the window of how long he'd been tested for. I think it was less than a month in the end. But I was tweeting these guys constantly, and I think Porter in the end said, like, you've just got to let it go, man. And like he said, tweeted me back, and I was like, yeah, but no one else has sort of bothered to actually find out what's going on here. And yeah, like you say, it's the same for the Olympics. People will forget about this in a week or so, and no one will ever. And they know that no one's going to be. It's not like FIFA where there'll be a camp of reporters day and night sat outside the HQ for years trying to get the truth. Like no one cares. People will leave it. They don't need to explain themselves. It's a real shame that we don't have kind of more scrutiny and more of a spotlight on it. But yeah, by the way, guys, just to summarise the situation, I've got a couple of tweets from everyone's favourite boxing reporter in America, Mr. Dan Rayfield.
Oh.
So on when was it? When did Stevenson fight? Was it Friday? Saturday. On Saturday, we've got Mr. Dan Rayfield saying, Ramirez wins by split decision over Stevenson. I do not agree. Okay, 24 hours later, we've got, I had it 2-1 Yoka, not a robbery. So that's a nice little bit of objective analysis from an American.
He doesn't like Britain. Our portion sizes aren't big enough for him.
Portion sizes aren't big enough. He's also a man who famously gave Donaire 6 rounds against Rigondeaux. So he clearly knows how to score a fight.
Just to say,
the idea that I'm really struggling with the Yoka thing. He's blocked me, so I can't tweet him. But I really want to just say, how can you justify a guy getting outlanded 3-1?
Shep, I think it was you or Paul who asked a couple of minutes ago what did the Olympics give us, and it gave us 2 very important positives. The first one was Shakur Stevenson's attitude after he lost, which I thought was really commendable, and I really hope he doesn't get corrupted by Floyd Mayweather and sign for the money team, because I just think on national TV in America he really endeared himself to the general public. And the second one is Anthony Fowler, and I'll leave that one there.
Do you not think with the Olympics
maybe that was the problem with the Olympics, was that we got our gold medal was seeing Fowler get knocked out in the first round, and we got it too soon. Maybe imagine if Fowler had actually I don't want to tempt fate, but if Fowler had got knocked out in the last second of the final, having been ahead on points, would that have almost been better? I don't know.
No, because he would have still won a silver.
Yeah, but I just want to see him. I want to see him disappointed, and I feel like.
Well, I don't think he would have been very happy about going out in the first round.
We said before
it was over too quickly, and he didn't get enough like scrutiny on him for it.
We said before we'd rather him not qualify or qualify and get knocked out in the first round. And
by a guy who also didn't medal.
Yeah, we also said qualify and get knocked out in the first round.
No one's
got what we wanted.
Do you remember when about a week ago everyone was saying that Fowler had gone out to the gold medalist, and then the guy who beat him got knocked out in the quarterfinals?
Oh, he was world class.
He's one of the greatest middleweights of all time, I think, in the amateur scene. But anyway,
just one thing, not to defend it at all, but do you not think with so many fights, like 300 fights over a 2-week period, you are going to get some very bad decisions? Because you get them in normal boxing, but they're not so condensed, are they? You might get one month, and then a few months later you might get another stinker. But with the Olympics, you can get 3 bad ones in 3 days, and you just think, fuck this, I've had enough.
The reason why we are more outraged at the Olympics is because it's usually the same judges.
Yeah, I agree. Like I'm pissed off about it. I said to myself after the condom when I was done, but like a lemon, I was there every day after, still watching the same sport and still getting pissed off because for some reason I quite like it.
I think the point is, none of us really can. There's sort of blood on all our hands, really. I suppose to put it poetically, like you can't sort of make a moral stand while still following the sport. It's just impossible. If you follow the sport, you have to put up with so much stuff, and you're sort of guilty by association, I think. And I think anyone saying, right, I'm done after Conlon, or I'm done after Joyce, I'm washing my hands of boxing, but then a week later they'll be watching a guy that maybe they like getting a dodgy decision, and it won't bother them. And I think we're all guilty of it.
Secretly, deep down, every boxing fan enjoys the circus. They just don't admit it.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah,
It's like a soap opera, isn't it? Like as fucking
totally.
Bird says, you go along for the ride, and you like all the bullshit that comes out every day. It makes you mad, but secretly you go to bed thinking, I'm never gonna listen to this cunt again. And then you wake up in the morning, you're like, oh, and what he said last night.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if the best guy won every single time, it would be much less interesting.
Yeah, the dirty side makes it interesting, I suppose, isn't it?
And the idea that someone you hate could get robbed. Like let's indulge Paul Smith for a minute and say that he did win the Abraham fight. That's probably the greatest moment since I've been following the sport, is when they read out that card and it was 120-108, and and you just saw Smith's face. That was honestly one of the best sporting moments of my life. And knowing that he'd won 4 or 5 rounds, and just the fact that he didn't get a single round, that was a 5-star moment, and only boxing can give you that.
You know, we usually, we rank the governing bodies in professional boxing. Say that, they're 4, organisations there. If we had to put AIBA amongst them, where would they be?
They'd still be above the WBA.
The best fight the best. Would you rather have the best fighting the best with dodgy judging, or the best avoiding each other? Don't know. It's a tough one.
With 3 different belts.
Yeah. No. I mean, like, say something like the WBC, where they don't even make they won't make Canelo and Golovkin fight each other. They spent 2 years sitting on their hands. At least with AIBA, the top 5 heavyweights fight each other, consistently. Imagine it was run like, say the WBO, and you've got Yoka fighting that fucking, who was that guy who got the gift and then got the really fat guy he was from like Iran or something. But if you've got Yoka fighting some sort of tub of lard in the final, a sort of hand-picked opponent, it will be so much worse.
Shep, you just reminded me, that was another decision that was really dodgy. Nistor from Romania, a really good fighter, losing to that guy from Jordan, and the winner of that
Jordan guy, yeah. And Yoka fought him in the next round.
Yeah.
So Yoka got a bye. Then he fought that lad from Jordan, who should never have got through. And whether you think they fixed it so Yoka had an easier opponent in the next round, I don't know. But and then he got the gift over Hrgovic and the gift over Joyce.
That's what Nistor said.
Yeah.
After he lost to the Jordanian, that was his theory.
It's quite. I think it's easy to sort of go down the rabbit hole, isn't it, of the conspiracy theories? But would it surprise you to learn that that's what they did? Not really.
Well, Michael Conlon said that his dad and the other trainer was told by some Russian guy that Michael was fucked regardless. So that's another conspiracy for you. Conlon said that today in a press release.
Well,
I'm sure we all read that piece on The Guardian, that it was from about 3 weeks ago, and it was a former Irish AIBA official, and he basically made a load of claims that the draw was fixed. And the draw is never televised, so it does make you wonder. But yeah, there was somewhere I read today that I think it was Katie Taylor's dad who wondered if Ireland had been punished for that man's comments.
Well, I mean, the idea that the draw would be completely random seems a bit far-fetched when it's done behind closed doors. Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, you like to think that they fix it so the best guys will fight each other in the final, which I don't really mind. But the idea, much more likely.
The season is dodgy, though. The season is done on world rankings, and take someone like Paddy Barnes, for example, who went into the Olympic Games, and I think he was on like a 3.5-year unbeaten run, and he was like 7th in AIBA's flyweight rankings.
Yeah, and
yeah, obviously the feeds are done from the rankings.
It's just a bit murky, isn't it? Like, if you have to sort of pick apart the way the ranking systems work, then that's a red flag immediately. It should be very, very transparent and clear to see. But I mean, it wouldn't surprise me at all if it was predetermined that the Irish weren't going to do very well. I've got absolutely no doubt that the Russians, after a couple of their favourites went out controversially. That I think they had a flyweight who was favourite for the gold, and he got beaten by the American, that Hernandez guy. And after that, the Russian judging suddenly switched, and there weren't any more close fights. And it's it's what 1 + 1 = 2, isn't it? Really, it's pretty obvious that one followed the other. They had a couple of shocks, and then they decided to make sure it wasn't going to happen again. It's just a shame that the sport is so open to that sort of corruption, and it's so subjective, and you have fucking idiots like Dan Rayfield trying to look clever by sort of encouraging it, trying to score sort of personal points. But yeah, like I say, I guess we all do it, and I would have loved it if Fowler had been robbed. So I'm a hypocrite as well. We all have our inconsistencies, I suppose. But if we finish up on the Olympics, should we go on to Errol Spence? I think that was about the only other thing. Were there any other cards from the weekend at all? I don't think so.
Jarrell Miller.
Oh yeah. I lost some money on that card. It's annoying.
Who did you lose
on? Did anyone watch that? The showbox card wasn't too bad actually.
Saw the main event. That was it.
Yeah, I saw the main event.
Well,
big guy, isn't he? For a big.
Did anyone see the undercard just quickly before? Fuck's sake. Paul, did you see the undercard?
No.
Thanks a lot.
Just a big, powerful guy, that Miller.
Yeah, I actually didn't see the main event, but I saw the 3 fights before. I had money on Mamonjanov and Mayfield to both win. I thought that Mayfield actually fought a guy who was 10-0, who'd only fought one other opponent with a winning record, and I thought this guy's way over his head. They are banking on Mayfield being completely shot, and I actually don't think Mayfield is shot. I think he's a decent sort of gatekeeper. I thought Mayfield won the fight. I thought he won at least 7 of the 10 rounds. The other guy got the decision by a point. Pretty dodgy. Most of the people on the TV seemed to think Mayfield had done enough to win it. So that fucked my bet immediately. And then Mamonjanov, who's quite a useful lightweight, who fought Richard Comey about a year ago, but he's only got 1 or 2 losses. He fought that guy Medard, who got that huge knockout a couple of months ago on Showbox that the Americans were going mad about. I think it's one of the KO of the Year candidates. I'll put it in the chat or in the comments or whatever under the video. But he was. They fought, and I thought Mamonjanov would be able to frustrate him and maybe win a decision. Mamonjanov won 5 of the first 7 rounds and then just got completely iced in the 8th. So that was my second. The second part of the bet failed, and then the third part of my accumulator was Nate Diaz to beat Conor McGregor. So I got 0 for 3, and deservedly lost, which is why I was in such a bad mood last night and this morning. But yeah, it was a good undercard. I actually missed the main event. So Carby, what did you think of Miller and who was it? Fred Cassie, wasn't it? He was fighting, and he's fucked off.
Oh no! Hold on, I muted myself. Well, he's just a big, powerful guy. He weighed in 300 pounds, so he needs to cut down a bit if he's going to be fighting better people, because he's going to need a bit more conditioning than that. But he smashed Cassie to bits. So he's got a few more levels to go up yet before we start talking about him fighting for world titles, obviously, because Cassie is effectively a journeyman.
So what you're saying is he's got a better win than Anthony Joshua?
Would you say Cassie's any better than Brazil? I mean,
Cassie beat.
Cassie beat.
He got robbed.
Yeah.
Is Cassie better than Dillian White? That's probably quite a close fight.
Yeah, that would be a 50-50 fight, I'd say. Well, he beat Fred Cassie more convincingly than Hughie Fury did, obviously.
Yeah. And
Hughie's been suffering with terrible AIDS on his back, and he which is now what we know as nandrolone.
Cassie, to be fair, Cassie is a solid gatekeeper, isn't he? I suppose. And if you're actually good or good enough,
That's how bad the heavyweight division is, isn't it? Fred Cassie is a gatekeeper to world level.
Fred Cassie would be Anthony Joshua's best win.
Yes, I think he probably would. Yeah, and it is a real. It's a real sign of how much more work there is to do with Joshua, that his second defence, once he'd won the title, or sorry, his first defence when he won the title, was against a guy that Cassie beat. I think that's quite shocking. Cassie really, back in the day, he would have been NABO level, wouldn't he? He wouldn't have got above domestic level in the States. If we're talking in the 90s or whatever, there's no way he would have beaten even a guy like Tommy Morrison would have smashed him. guys who were really not taking that seriously. It just shows you how shit the division is at the moment. For all of our talk about the heavyweight division being revitalised, and
Well, this is it. I made a comment a few months ago, I think, saying exactly that everyone was saying that the heavyweight division would be revitalised after, obviously, Fury dispensed of Vlad, and just Vlad going, in fact. People were saying, as soon as Vlad's gone, the heavyweight division can get on with itself. Well, he's been deposed, and there's nothing that happened.
Well, effectively.
Yeah, I think that it's you take away the dominant guy, and it becomes more open, and people assume that's better, but actually all that's happened is that the standard has dropped across the board. It's a bit like the NBA after Michael Jordan retires, and they're like, okay, now there's about 5 teams that can win the championship suddenly, but the actual standard has gone down because the best player by a mile has left.
But the worst thing if you with other sports, at least they're all going to be still competing with each other, and the level field is actually fighting each other. The level of quality might have dropped, but at least they're all competing against each other. What we've got now is the level of quality is obviously dropped, and they're still not competing against each other because they're all scrambling for a title to have some sort of vague claim as being the heavyweight champion of the world, which is still by far and away the biggest and most important title in the in boxing. It's going to draw in the biggest crowds no matter where you go, and they cling to this hope of being this undefeated next great hope, and they're not going to fight each other because they're not going to risk it. And it's still this horrible risk-reward, just nature of the sport that we've got, and it's just rampant at the moment, and it's fucking horrible, and it's just getting worse.
No, the problem with the division is the fact that the unified champion hasn't fought in 10 months, and doesn't clear, as much as they keep talking about this October date, whether that fight actually we've got the challenger taking the champion to court.
But you say that.
So guys, just to be clear to the listeners, Paul is saying that in a division where Deontay Wilder is defending against guys like Chris Arreola, and Anthony Joshua is defending against guys like Brazil, it's Tyson Fury's fault. So it's not. It's not saying it's Tyson. I ignore the others because as much as the others are world champions, like I said, the heavyweight division has always been unique. It doesn't matter. The last time we had a heavyweight situation where 2 guys were equal were obviously the Klitschko brothers, but they physically couldn't fight each other. Before that, it was when you had a bunch of no marks. At this point, we have a very clear number 1 in the division, and that's Tyson Fury. The problem is Fury isn't able to fight at the moment. Deontay Wilder's now out with an injury. Joshua's fighting bums. Like I said, the division should have opened up, but because a lot of challengers are sat around wondering what's happening with the Fury-Klitschko situation, I mean, Fury could have had 2 defences in this time, and because of one reason or another, it hasn't happened, and that's what's slowing things up. It's because, again, it's almost as if nothing's changed from last year.
And let's be honest, if Fury wasn't tied up with well, first of all, the Klitschko rematch, and second, the potential ban that's been placed on him in fighting in Britain, which is, apparently why we think that he hasn't fought in this time. Would he have fought anything better?
Yeah, no, he wouldn't. He wouldn't have
done. Let's say there was no rematch clause with Vlad. Fury was the road was completely clear after November. Who do you reckon Fury would have defended against?
He would have tried to fight Wilder. 100%.
And do you think it would have happened? Would Wilder have taken it?
Wilder would rather have fought Fury than Povetkin, let's put it that way. If they could make that...
Well, no, he would have had his mandatory. He would have had his mandatory,
which
would have been the Polish guy.
It wasn't Spilk.
Spilk, the other one.
Oh, Glaskov. Whatever.
Yeah, that's
Glaskov, not Polish.
Yeah, and he would have easily beaten... Okay, so let's say he fights Glaskov in February and he beats him easy. Then, Fury could have... He could have won that fight without training, to be honest. He probably would have come in very fat. Who do you think he would be building up to fight?
Wilder.
Do you think it would be Wilder? You don't think would Hearn have taken it?
There's been a slated fight between Wilder and Fury for about 3 years, isn't there? 2-3 years. They definitely would have fought, because Wilder don't want to fight Povetkin.
Yeah, but
he's not interested.
He was signed to fight Povetkin, to be fair to him. We've got to give him...
They got out of it, didn't they?
No, they got out of it because Povetkin failed a test.
Yeah, I think we can give Wilder the credit for that, because it looked like he was he'd flown to Russia, hadn't he? He was in Russia, I think, when the news came out.
Well, either way, if he could have avoided fighting Povetkin by taking a Tyson Fury unification, which would obviously take precedence anyway, get paid more for it in a bigger fight, what are you going to do? You lose to Povetkin, the Americans don't really know him. They don't really care about him. He goes back, well, they don't really care about Wilder anyway. But you lose to Fury, you're in a massive fight, probably a decent fight as well, because Wilder's going to come to fight. And we all know what Fury's like. You have a laugh in the build-up, and he can be hit, he can be hurt. So it'd be a good fight between the two of them. What would you do if you're Wilder? Are you going to fight Povetkin in Russia, or are you going to fight Fury, I don't know, let's say Vegas or New York in a big fight and get paid the same? And
Hearn would have been sitting there saying
Fury
fighting for the right to the winner was fighting for the right to face Joshua.
I know Fury changes his mind every single day, but he's always said he's not going to fight bums. He's not interested. He only wants to fight the other champions. He wants to unify. He's not going to fight random people like Brazil. He's not interested. He can't get up for it.
I do think Fury would rather have 3 huge stadium fights and then get knocked out than have 10 defenses against shit, bums.
Well, he could. He's not good enough to not be able to be up for fighting people.
Well,
Brazil and that not up for it, but you know what I mean.
It's pretty easy to tread water in the heavyweight division, isn't it? I mean, come on, Fury could have been fighting guys like Spilker and fucking who's the one, Eric Molina for fight. Look at Wilder's defenses, honestly, they are so bad.
Do Hapas.
Yeah.
Well, and look how fucking rampant the spastic casuals have gone for Joshua because he's been treading water, fighting absolute gash. They think he's fucking literally the next Mike Tyson, the next Muhammad Ali. They've literally said that because he's knocking out spastics.
Who's he going to fight in November, do we think? Because
Pulev.
Hasn't Hearn confirmed it? Is it November 29th or something, the end of November?
Well, Sky Sports News, who obviously must have some knowledge of what it is, they're saying it's either Pulev or the mandatory, the kid from New York, I forget his name.
Joseph Parker.
Yeah, Joseph Parker, yeah. But I don't think Parker wants it straight away. I think he wants to wait until next year.
Parker's team wanted to push it back.
But now, apparently, I've seen an interview on Twitter, I don't know, it was with a Boxing Scene or Boxing News or something, and his head trainer said they'd be up for it in November, December.
Okay.
So maybe, but I think
they'll be up for Parker, won't they? Although Pulev isn't a big puncher, and I think anyone who Hearn will be quite happy to put him in with anyone who can't really punch. And
well, Pulev's a good win for him as well. Let's not get it twisted. That'd be a good win.
Best win by a mile. Yeah.
That'd
But he's not a puncher. That's the thing.
It's not an elite level win, but that's a solid win. If he can do what he's done to everyone else to Pulev, you'd have to start maybe taking him a bit more seriously.
Pulev's the real gatekeeper of the division, isn't he? Really, you should be if you're claiming to be a proper champion, you should be beating Pulev. The fact that Chisora couldn't beat Pulev shows that Chisora does not deserve, another title shot. I think I'd really like to see Hughie Fury against Pulev at some point maybe in the next year.
Well, apparently, Peter Fury, again, I don't trust anything he says because he changes his mind all the time. But they tried making the Pulev fight for Hughie, and Pulev is booked up to do something else. So take of that what you will.
Well, I think to be honest, Pulev's probably got options on a few world champions, hasn't he? So he'd much rather do that than fight Hughie Fury for
in other heavyweight
brand in Manchester. But
they've also the WBC have made an interim title between Povetkin and Bermain Stavern.
Yeah, I don't know how Staverne's come back, honestly, because Staverne's fought. I think he's fought once.
He fought Derek Rossi.
Yeah, he fought Rossi, and he got dropped. He got hurt in that fight.
He got hurt early on. It was the second or third round, I think.
Yeah, and Rossi is shite. Isn't that's the one that Fury fought, isn't it? Hughie, a few months ago, isn't it?
I can't remember.
I think he fought Rossi maybe last year. I might be wrong about that, but anyway, he's Rossi's a guy that Wilder beat quite easily a couple of years ago. Areola when he was completely done. Could we see Alex? Let's be really cynical here. Could we see Hearn getting? It's too late for Chisora now, isn't it? I think if Chisora had beaten Pulev, that would have definitely been the next defence.
That was nailed on then.
Could you see maybe David Price in November if he gets a win between now and then?
I mean,
it would sell.
He's fighting on that Liverpool card, isn't he?
Yeah. And it really would sell, honestly. Because Houses are fucking idiots, and they would all bet on Price to win.
Well, and it's all British world title fight.
Well, Price has already taken his soul once, hasn't he? He can do
Price
it
has
again.
been slagging him off, hasn't he? Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah, they've made
that might happen.
that story's
but
been
that
out
won't
there
be
for
next.
that story's been out there for years about obviously Price sparking Joshua.
Yeah,
But Sky
I
have
read the
only
headline.
just started bringing it out. Yeah, Sky have
I
only...
read the headline and thought, oh my god, he sparked him again. And then I read the story and was like,
Yeah.
oh no, same story from 5 years ago. Yeah, I thought he'd come back for a rematch or something. I mean, yeah. To be honest, a huge puncher knocking out a prospect 5 years ago. It's when he wasn't even pro. Like it's not that big a deal, to be honest. But yeah, I don't know. I do feel like that will be massive eventually, and I don't know what's going on with Hay. He's gone completely quiet. Doesn't seem to be.
I've seen a few people saying he's going to retire again.
Well,
We've
Hayes
got
busy getting divorced. Yeah, exactly.
That's the money. So I don't know if maybe he's got enough money maybe he came back to make enough money to cover the divorce settlement. I don't know. And then and now he's sort of in the clear and he can retire and go back to pretending to be an actor.
Yeah, you can go on
Sucking off BJ Flores.
Have we talked about Bellew Flores at all? I can't remember.
Last week, I think.
I mean, Bellew's putting it all on the line, isn't he? It's such a risky first defence.
Do you know what? He's conned us all, isn't he, Bellew? He came on here, and all of us, not you, Shep, because you was Khaled banned you.
I was banned, yeah, at that point.
But he came on, give it all the spiel, like when he wins a world title, you don't want no gimmies, unifications, nothing else. I won't fight any shit. First defence, absolute horse shit.
I want to give the doubt and say it's not his choice, but I don't know, it's difficult.
I think Bellew calls the shots with her, and I don't think Hearn tells him what to do. Because obviously Brian knows a bit with Bellew. He talks to him. They DM every now and then, don't they?
But it could be a case of, the other guys are tied up. Isn't Lebedev fighting? I feel like he's got a fight booked, hasn't he?
Oh, what's his name? Yeah, he has. It was
Gassiev, isn't he?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, Gassiev.
Gassiev. Okay,
Yeah.
so Lebedev's busy. I haven't heard a thing.
Quality defence for
Dorticos, I haven't heard anything from him since he beat Kalenga.
Well, what's weirder? What's weirder about it is Bradis is on the undercard.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
was it maybe a case that what's his who's it Drozd? Is it maybe a case that he turned it down or something?
No, but his other mandatory Bradis, because you've got two of them.
Yeah.
Is on the undercard.
No, but Drozd is the first one. I think he's got the priority.
Yeah, but if he's not, then it goes to the following one.
Exactly. Surely you should go to Bradis.
They don't wait around. If the number one's not available, they go to number two, and the number one keeps it for the next time.
It's not as if Bradis isn't available.
No, he's fighting on the undercard.
Exactly.
I'm going to be nice to Bellew for once, and I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say, I mean, look, he took the Kalenga fight, and sorry, the what's his name? Makabu fight, and that was a fight that it didn't seem like he was interested in taking a real challenge like that, and he beat him fairly and great win, and you almost want to say he deserves a sort of an easy defence.
No,
I hate that. No, I agree. I hate that.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't deserve an easy defence. He had a home world title fight, a challenge.
Yeah, exactly. He had it in
at Goodison Park. Everything he wanted.
Well, that pissed me off. Hearn saying this is the homecoming for Bellew. I mean, what the fuck? He literally fought on his football team's home ground out to win a world title, and now he's saying it's a homecoming. It's fucking embarrassing.
Yeah, I think where is the next fight? Is it the Echo? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bellew has got, before the Makabu fight, he had one half good win at the weight, and that was the guy literally who just fought before Makabu.
Or Masterneck.
Masterneck, yeah. That was a half decent win. The rest of his wins at Cruiserweight were fucking gash.
Brudov's not a terrible win, is it?
Bang average.
Yeah, but it's not abysmal, is it? It's not as
Brudov's
bad as some.
As well. There's a common theme to this pod.
At Cruiserweight, when you've got so much talent, Brudov is pretty shit.
Granted.
Yeah, Brudov's not great, and the theme to this show seems to be that everyone is fighting gatekeepers, which is, I think, says a lot about where we are with the sport at the moment. It's a shame, and on the same subject, Spence. Bundu is a gatekeeper, isn't he? As much as we like him, and he's a tough bastard, but that was again Spence fighting a gatekeeper. But I think a rare example of a prospect fighting a gatekeeper, which is what is supposed to happen. That's why they're gatekeepers. They are there to let the prospects in or out of the top bracket. It's not for a champion to fight a gatekeeper because a champion has already made it past him by definition. But nevertheless, yeah, I predicted this fight perfectly. I said Spence by knockout in the 6th round. There's a tweet if you don't believe me, and that's exactly what happened. Thought Spence was quite patient early on with the jab. Got clipped a little bit, sort of 3rd, 4th, 5th round, and then hurt Bundu with the body shot, and then it was sort of the beginning of the end. He's a fucking good finisher, Spence. Like, he's really good and he knows when he's hurt someone, and he doesn't let them breathe at all afterwards. Were you guys impressed at all? I know we all predicted the stoppage, didn't we?
I was.
You were impressed.
We all thought, wow, you wouldn't have been surprised if he didn't stop him because Bundu is a tough bastard, but
I didn't see anyone
we expected him to stop him.
Yeah.
And he went out and just smashed him to bits. What you're
Well,
supposed to do.
anyone expect him to chin him like that?
No. The way he knocked him out was like, he nearly fell out the ring, didn't he?
And he was out, wasn't he? It wasn't like he quit on his stool or he
Alex said earlier on, and I kind of agree to a point, that Bundu was done after the first uppercut hit him and he went down the first time.
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah.
And Spence, the sick bastard, he went for the exact same uppercut. Bundu caught it on the gloves and then he just hit him with a hook, and that was the...
He does get telegraphed a bit though, Spence, and he loads up on these punches from the outside, and he throws some shots from quite far away, and you could see Bundu was timing him. Whenever Spence threw the left or the right to the body, Bundu would jump forward, sort of leap forwards, like with his kind of bouncy style. He'd jump forwards and he'd throw a couple of punches at Spence's chin, and he was open for it every time. And you think, like, I don't know, I'd like to see if a guy like Lamont Peterson could maybe make him think twice, because he could time, he could time a counter shot down the middle.
I think part of that, Shep, is that he hasn't respected Algieri or Bundu at all.
Yeah.
He's got
neither of them were. Spence hasn't been anywhere. Spence got hurt very badly by some journeyman guy in like his 10th fight, and he was very wobbled. He came back to win, obviously, did well to hang in there, but he was very badly hurt by it, and he hasn't fought anything near a puncher since.
Yeah.
And you do think maybe they're a bit worried about his chin. I'm not sure. I'd love to see if a guy like Thurman, although actually I think Spence was...
Porter is the next logical step, I think. If you're going for pure progression of where you want him to go for building a fighter, you think Porter would be the step to go. But obviously we want to see the Brook fight. The Brook fight is the one that's mandated. It's the one that should happen. It's not going to happen because Brook's going to...
But literally, if I was Spence's manager or promoter or whatever, and I wanted to responsibly bring him along, Porter makes sense on every single level, because he's a puncher, but he's not a massive puncher. Like, he's tough, but he's not that tough.
He
can be hurt. I think Spence would beat him, and if Spence stopped him, that would be a massive statement. But Porter, if he landed some of those shots that Bundu was landing, Spence was wide open on a few occasions. And I don't know, maybe it's because he knows that against guys like Algieri and Bundu, he's got nothing to fear coming back. But he was very, very, very open for a few shots. And there are, even a guy like Brook could make him pay for that. And the Americans are going absolutely mad for him because they're so fucking starved of decent boxers at the moment. Apparently Shakur Stevenson's the next Roy Jones, apparently. But they are absolutely desperate for anyone who's half decent to come through. And a lot of hype for Spence, but I'm not really happy with people who are saying it's a foregone conclusion that he just smashed Brook, because I really don't think it is. And although I think I'd favour him, Brook's a very good fighter, and that will be a very, very close fight.
Yeah, people get it twisted with Brook. He's not shit at all. He's very good.
Really good, yeah.
Yeah, but because of the defences and the leg stabbing and that, and the puffy voice and that, he's just a laughing stock, isn't he?
I had an argument the other day on one of the forums, Copy, with this. I was criticising Brook's title reign, and I was saying how the IBF rankings were shite, and Spence would end up fighting someone awful for the vacant belt if Brook vacates it, as we think he will. And the guy was sort of, I was saying how Brook had, he had the weakest organisation. He had such easy, a terrible run of mandatory opponents. And the guy went, no, look, in Brook's defence, Gavin was a voluntary. And I was like, right, that's your defence, is it? That he voluntarily fought Gavin? And the guy sort of realised what he said and was like, oh, actually, yeah, I see what you mean. That does it's pretty bad that he chose Gavin.
In Brooks' defence again, Press-Pass had that fight very close up until the stoppage.
It was neck and neck, mate. I mean, Gavin was boxing his ears off for the first 3 or 4 rounds.
As Tom said, Gavin is a lovely boxer.
He's a lovely boxer.
But on that then,
way,
who do you think, if someone's get the rankings up, who do you think Spencer's going to have to fight for the vacant title, seeing as Brook ain't never coming back to 147?
Well, we said Jeff Horn's one of them, isn't it?
And it's Ponomarov or something? Ponomarov?
The guy who beat, that's the guy who beat Mosley, wasn't it, recently?
No, that's Avanesian.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I'm getting confused. Okay. Okay, Ponomarev, I don't think I've seen him before then.
No, I've not seen him. The name rings a bell for some reason. But
we've got Jeff Horn at 4, but would he want to travel to the States to get knocked out by Spence? I don't know. During that fight against Bailey, they were talking about him sort of defending the Aussie belt a few times. I'm not sure they would want to fight for a title immediately. Peterson is at 5. That would make a lot of sense. I'm sure Peterson would take it.
Yeah.
You say what you want about Peterson, but he fought pretty much everyone.
What about if Amir Khan wants to get knocked out again?
Khan's not ranked by the IBF.
That
can change in a heart. Berto could be a possibility. Or Robert Guerrero, Heyman's favourite, could get another title.
Guerrero is not currently in there. They've got...
you should not count who's currently in there because it matters very little.
No, I know. I'm just saying, sort of guys who are already ranked. You've got Vasquez in there.
Well, if it's a vacant belt, it has to be someone who's like 2 or 3, isn't it?
Is it? I thought it was top 5. I might be wrong.
I'm not sure what the exact rules are, but I swear for the vacant belt, it's obviously the mandatory. And
well, Spence is now number 1, which means number 2 is vacant. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if you had Lamont Peterson jumping up from 5 to 2. And then they can get away with it. That would make a lot of sense. You've also got Mr. Bradley Skeet in at 7, who would, to be honest, he'd ice Spence, so they won't go near that fight.
Well, they'll go.
Sticking with my theory, Spence is good enough to win that Skeet is good enough to give a tough fight to some of the champions. I really want to see Skeet against Garcia. I really want to see that.
Skeet will fight for a vacant belt. I think when Manny Pacquiao beats Vargas, he'll win the belt, as he usually does when he retires or fucks off to do something else, and then it'll be a vacant belt, and obviously Warren Boxing Organisation will get Skeet in there.
You'll get Skeet against someone. You'll get Skeet against someone like Jeff Horn for that, because Horn is fucking hell. Horn is like top 10 in 3 of the rankings bodies.
That's because you can pick up all the
fucking rubbish
Asian and Pacific titles in Australia.
Yeah, they've got like about 12 belts before they fucking.
Well, you've seen that photo of Big Daddy Brown, ain't you, with like a room just full of different belts.
Yeah, they all look shit.
Yeah, genuinely, even like we, who, proper hardcore fans, as it goes, I don't know what 90% of those belts are. I've never seen them before. And, and we spend every day reading news about boxing. And
Joe Parker as well has got like 7.
Ridiculous. I'm looking at the top 15. I mean, it's pretty slim pickings. I mean, you've got like Frankie Gomez is in there. You've got that Benavidez, Omar Figueroa. I don't know if he's even still fighting. Kavalauskas, Felix Diaz.
Kavalauskas is with Bob.
I'd love to see Diaz get a shot, but he'll just get robbed again, won't he? It's a shame.
On Pacquiao Vargas, I'm really hoping Vargas can beat him.
He's not much, Vargas, sadly.
Well, Vargas is on the juice, so he...
Is Pacquiao good enough? Or probably is good enough.
Why
do you underrate him? He just beat Bradley, clearly.
No, but what is he in it for now?
The money.
Why is he coming back? Like, he's purely in it for money.
Yeah.
And he can only fit it around his politics now. He can only do a certain day.
And his basketball.
Does he care at all?
There's a very good thing, Max Kellerman did an interview the other day sort of explaining the decision by Pacquiao, and he summed it up completely perfectly. He went, look, it's not about Pacquiao ducking anyone, because Pacquiao has fought everyone in his career. He's quite clearly not afraid to fight anyone. But he needs the money, so he's going to take a fight he can definitely win against, or almost definitely win against Vargas for a couple of million, and then he'll fight Crawford next year, because Crawford, is a tough fight. He might lose it. If he fought Crawford straight away, then if he loses, he's earning what, maybe $1 million in the fight after that, if he's coming off a loss at the age of 36 or whatever. Like, he just needs the money. So it makes I've got no issue with him fighting Vargas and then fighting Crawford in April, and I think he will fight Crawford eventually. It's just the Crawford fight will be when he only needs one more payday, if that makes sense. Whereas I think at the moment he needs a few, because by the sounds of it, he owes quite a lot of money in tax and all that shit. And did you hear about HBO turning it down?
They've tore up his contract.
Well, that's what Aram says, but I don't know if that's true.
No, that they're looking for other outlets to put the fight on.
Well, yeah. For this fight though, but Aram has said that by refusing it, they've invalidated his contract, and that means he's free to negotiate with anyone else. But HBO have said no, it's just for this one fight. He is free to, if he wants to secure another channel to put it on pay-per-view, he can do that because we've turned it down. But the contract is still valid. So
Aaron didn't say it in them words. He said they've blamed Pacquiao dry and threw him into the dirt.
Well, HBO is saying that because they know that obviously there's still rumours, I think, of the Pacquiao-Floyd rematch, the utterly pointless Pacquiao-Floyd rematch. And obviously HBO still want to retain a chance of taking their cut of that, because it will still do a lot of money, I think.
I think it's a bit more sort of immediate than that.
If I was
to me, it sounded like HBO were basically saying you can take this fight wherever you want, but then if you want to fight Crawford next year, that'll be on HBO. Whereas Aram is saying we can take this fight wherever we want, and then we can fight Crawford wherever we want, and we can fight Floyd wherever, etc., etc. To be honest, it doesn't sound like they've actually broken the terms of their contract. Aram is saying that he's going to get lawyers to look at it, but I don't think HBO would turn it down knowingly breaking the contract. But it just seems like they can only do it November, can't they, because of the political terms in the Philippines.
If he was like Steven Espinosa in this situation and there was a chance that Pacquiao was out of contract, you'd snap him up, wouldn't you? If you're pure
they did it before
and it makes life a lot easier for everyone.
They did it before with the Mosley fight, didn't they? He went over to Showtime, although that was before Espinosa was there. But look, he'll pop up on some stupid channel and everyone will laugh, and then he'll beat Vargas really easily, and people will say, yeah, he's still washed out.
Is he going to turn up?
People will ignore the fact that Pacquiao for the last 2 years has been beating top 5 guys in his division consistently. People just they wrote Pacquiao off like 4 years ago after the Marquez fight, and they've just ignored everything he's done since. And I think
hold on. I'm not going to hate on him because I like Pacquiao. I'm a Pacquiao fan, but what has he done?
Won every single round against Algieri.
Yeah.
Good.
No, but that Algieri is not top 5 in that division.
7 out of 10. That's a 7 out of 10 win, I think. Algieri at the time was unbeaten.
Really?
He's beaten, blah, blah, blah. He's beaten Bradley twice, clearly. He's beaten him 9-3 and 8-4 on my cards. That's and that's Bradley, the Bradley who was beating the shit out of Rios. It's the Bradley who beat Marquez. It's the Bradley who beat Provodnikov. It's the Bradley who beat Vargas, who was top 5 in the division, no question. Who was top 10 pound for pound. Pacquiao beat him easily twice. And who was the other one he fought? He obviously fought Rios, won every round. That's that was a comeback fight. And then he fought Floyd. And there's no shame in getting beat by Floyd. And I just think people have had it in their mind that Manny's past it, he's on the way out. But it shows you that even Pacquiao at 75% of what he used to be is still amazing. Like, it really annoys me that people kind of downplay how good he still is, because he's Sam, let's say tomorrow they announce Pacquiao against Thurman. Who are you picking to win? I would very confidently pick Pacquiao.
I don't know if Pacquiao cares enough to beat people who are young and hungry. I really don't. I don't know if he's... I'm not sure.
Beat Bradley twice. Bradley's like one of the most determined fighters ever.
Yeah, but he's not as young and as hungry as like a Thurman would be. I'm not sure if Pacquiao now is currently good enough to not be fully, not have the right mindset and beat these people coming up. I'm not sure.
Pacquiao versus Danny Garcia gets announced.
Oh, he beat Danny Garcia, no doubt about it.
Well, there you go. Garcia is one of the top 5 guys in the division.
I don't think that Garcia is very good.
Pacquiao against Kell Brook, who wins if they announce it tomorrow? Obviously assuming Brook is still at 147.
Well, I'd go with Pacquiao, but again,
I'd pick him to beat all these guys.
And
these guys are all really good. Yeah, but you wouldn't be surprised, but you'd still pick.
I'm just doing what you do now. I know. Well, this could happen, but that could happen as well.
Yeah. I mean, you're saying you wouldn't be surprised, but you're not picking Pacquiao to lose, so you clearly would be a bit surprised. But I just think we're so kind of warped by Floyd being in the background that we're forgetting that this guy is still, he's still. Is there anyone that you would confidently pick to beat Pacquiao at 147?
Floyd.
Yeah, okay, fine. But assume that he's retired. Would you confidently pick Crawford? Because I wouldn't confidently pick him. I think I'd probably pick him, but
I don't think that would be at 147. I think they'd do 140 for that.
Let's say it's at 147 though, for the sake of the argument. Because Crawford would be good at 147. He's big enough.
I'd probably pick Crawford now.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. I think I probably would as well. But would you confidently say, yeah, I'm pretty sure Crawford's going to win?
No.
Or would you think
I'm basing my pick here off. I don't think Pacquiao gives a fuck, and I don't think he's good enough anymore to beat people not giving a shit. I know he just beat Bradley, but you could say that was his retirement party, whatever. Whether it was or not, whether he had any intention of retiring, we don't know. But I don't think personally he's in it for the right reasons, and I don't think he trains hard enough anymore. I don't really think he cares.
Well, maybe not, but he still throws a lot of punches, still looks in great shape. He's still clearly got the stamina and stuff. I know what you mean. I don't think he's as mentally focused as he was when he was, 26, 27. But I think he's so naturally gifted that he can be at 75% and still beat top 10 guys. And yeah, it bugs me that they're really underappreciating him. I think since the Floyd fight, and I think he's still got a lot to offer. And Pacquiao can sleepwalk through. He could sleepwalk through the Garcia fight, couldn't he, and beat him? And
I'm just kind of annoyed by Pacquiao and Floyd now. I just want them both to disappear and let it kind of move on. I argue with
no, but you need to pass the torch. This is why it's really important that Pacquiao hangs around, because eventually he'll get beat, and you need to pass the torch on. Marquez beat him, obviously, but Marquez was even older than him, so that it didn't quite work. But if Crawford dominated and made Pacquiao retire on his stool, that would set up the next era perfectly.
Yeah, but I'd be quite sad that he's beaten Pacquiao that he might not have beaten in his peak.
Yeah, but it's the dude. Yeah, but you could say that De La Hoya would have beaten Floyd in his peak. I'm not saying he would have done, but I'm saying
Brian's definitely raging now.
Yeah, you could argue that at 154, De La Hoya would have beaten Floyd in his prime, and I think it's part of the duty of those great fighters is to know their place in history, as it were, and to be willing to sort of pass the torch on when they when it's time to go. And I think for all of Floyd saying, look, no one was good enough to beat me, the fact is Floyd engineered it so he could get out without losing, whereas someone like I don't know, Lennox Lewis literally beat everyone and then retired. Like, there was no one left to beat. He had beaten everyone. And I know you could say he should have rematched Klitschko and all this stuff. The fact is he beat him once. And yeah, Lewis beat everyone. Floyd created a path for himself and then stuck to it very rigidly. Whereas Lewis just went, yeah, all right, I'm going to fight everyone until there's no one left, and then I'm going to retire. And Pacquiao has always tried to do that. And I think if you do that, eventually you will lose eventually. And yeah, I just really feel like people are kind of downplaying Pacquiao. And I think in a few years after he's retired, people will be like, actually, yeah, we miss him a lot more than we thought we would. And he's still got stuff to offer, I think. Even fighting at 75% and only training for 5 or 6 weeks, he's just so good. And I've always argued that I think he's the most significant fighter of his era, even if he's not the best boxer. In the same way that I think Duran is more significant within the sport than Sugar Ray Leonard, even if you could argue that I think Leonard is more significant than Duran, even though you could argue that Duran was better. Yeah, it's a shame. There's a really good. I'll put it in the chat again. There's a good Kellerman video on this where he talks about how Floyd and Manny aren't directly comparable, and you can appreciate them both in slightly different ways. It's not necessarily a competition. I think it's a good argument to make.
I agree about passing on the torch. I think the Pacquiao should. Well, not. It's basically saying, "Oh, I want to see Pacquiao lose. I don't want to see that." I'm a big fan of his. I've always enjoyed watching his fights, and I've rooted for him quite a lot. I'm a bit of a Pactard, but I do think that it's important that happens in the sport. But I think that we're getting, from Carpy's point of view, we're getting to the point where Pacquiao isn't the star that he was, and he's really, really fading in terms of his marketability and his
Yeah.
popularity. I mean, in Asia and other parts of the world, he's still pretty big, but in America, which is predominantly where boxing was and to a degree still is, boxing capital of the world, he's not that big. And I think this pay-per-view, obviously because it's against Vargas, but beforehand, Pacquiao 5 years ago, it would have sold, a decent number.
Yeah,
I
he
think
was
it
selling
will
a million against like David Diaz and stuff, wasn't he? In complete sort of mismatches.
Yeah, and I think the only way you can really pass on a torch is by having the stardom to actually, and make that torch still be bright, as it were. He's still got to be a big enough star to do that, and I don't think he will be by the time he fights someone like Terence Crawford or Errol Spence. Someone that, and it might be a bit of a just a really sort of poor end and poor retirement for Pacquiao, seeing him lose and get sparked out by.
I feel like
Crawford or Spence or whoever it is.
I think it would be a real shame if one of the most depressing things I've ever seen in boxing was Morales against Garcia. Do you remember when Morales was clowning him? But
yeah,
he was clowning him, but also he knew that he couldn't beat him because Garcia was 15 years younger and all this stuff. And it was so sad because you knew that that in their primes, it wasn't even a comparison. Like
another one for you.
So much better than Garcia in his prime, but he couldn't. It was the classic case of the experience couldn't overcome the youth of the other guy, and that's sad. But it's also kind of a reality that we have to accept as fans. And I do think that you made a really good point, Alex. Like you're not cheering to see Pacquiao lose, and I'm certainly not. I love Pacquiao. I think we kind of got almost we've become sort of too comfortable with how good he is. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of routine when you see him fight. But I can remember seeing him against Hatton and against Cotto and stuff, and it was just unbelievable. It was the most exciting thing I'd ever seen in the sport. How he used to fight, and he's phenomenally important, not just in Asia, but across the whole world in terms of marketing boxing and introducing it to a new generation. But you're not rooting for him to lose, is my point. But I'm rooting for the next generation to be given the chance, if that makes sense. And I don't think Floyd gave a fair chance to the guys who came up after him, which he's not under any obligation to do that. But I do think that, and obviously you do what's best for your own career. But I think that De La Hoya gave the guys who came up after him the chance to beat him. And I do think that really great champions kind of have a responsibility to the fans to do that.
I get what you mean. I mean, I fully get it, obviously, but I don't really want to see Pacquiao get beat by, like I said earlier, like someone who probably wouldn't have beat him in his prime. I don't want to see Pacquiao get disposed of like that. I'd rather him just ride off into the sunset on a win.
Well, let's be fair. Crawford or Spence would never have beat Pacquiao in his prime.
No, but not many people would they?
Exactly.
Well, you could argue Floyd wouldn't have done either, but that's a whole other.
Well, that's it's indeed.
Brian's raging in silence, but I think dream scenario is a guy like Crawford goes. If boxing was an actual sort of good sport and wasn't so flawed, Crawford would go out to Manila, he'd fight Pacquiao in front of an arena of 75,000 people, and he'd beat him there, and it would be like fucking Benoit and Randy Orton, when he handed the title to him and sort of gave it to and it was so symbolic, and they shook hands, and like. The championship was passed on to the next era. That's what would happen.
Wrestling nonce.
Yeah, no, but that's what would happen, and it would be this really tangible moment where the torch was passed from one era to the next. And unfortunately, that happened with De La Hoya and Floyd, but it hasn't. It probably won't happen. There's no clean break between the Floyd era and what's going to come afterwards, and that's a shame because it basically means you have to start from the ground up again. And the momentum and the interest that Floyd generated isn't going to get passed on to the guys who come up after him. I think that's a shame. And although I wouldn't blame Floyd for it, I think it's a shame that the industry is too short-sighted to have kind of put a bit more pressure on him to do something about it. But I guess it's just one of those things. But yeah, I'm rooting for Pacquiao to lose with grace, like to lose the way Morales lost, towards the end where. He lost, but he was, he also got the respect of everyone who was watching him. I don't want to see Pacquiao get iced in 3 rounds or something by an Errol Spence or a fucking a Danny Garcia, a guy who wouldn't have been able to touch him when he was anywhere near his prime. But you just want things to move on. I agree. I think we're kind of in limbo at the moment. I agree with you on that, Copy.
Yeah, until Floyd's properly retired for like 5 years and Pacquiao's retired for 5 years, when there's not a chance where they can come back and one of these champions can get a big payday against them. Because let's be fair, it's still the biggest money fight for anyone in boxing in the weights that Pacquiao and Floyd participate in. If they were to come back, even in 2 years, if Floyd was to come back, he could fight, I don't know, let's say if Errol Spence is champion then, and it'd be the biggest payday Errol Spence will ever get fighting anyone.
Yeah.
And until Floyd's too old and he can't make a return, that's when I think people will start fighting each other and not hoping for that Mayweather payday again.
I think one of the issues is you've got guys now like Garcia who spent the best part of a year waiting on the call from Floyd, to see
look at Amir
maybe
Khan.
he's going to come back and then he'll fight me. Yeah.
Amir Khan's wasted like 4 years of his career, 4 years, just chasing a fight he's never going to get. When he could have fought Brook, he could have rematched Garcia, he could have fought Bradley. He's wasted when he retires, which ain't be that long because he'll get knocked out again sooner or later. The fights he could have had, I mean, he's had some good fights anyway with Maidana and whatnot, but the fights he could have had to what he has had is no comparison really.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is just purely because Floyd's shadow has lingered over him and he wants the payday.
He said recently there was a quote. Sorry, I'll let you jump in a sec. Just to finish up on it, that he said a lot of people get. This is Floyd talking actually, and he was surprisingly articulate on this point. And he said a lot of people get confused when I say TBE. I don't mean I've got the best record ever in boxing. I don't mean I've beaten the best guys or I've got the most impressive wins. I mean it's the whole package. Like if you look at the way I've set myself up. I have had the best ever career. I've had the dream career that if you had a kid and they said I want to be a fighter and you said right, you can have Pacquiao's career or you can have Floyd's career. You'd pick Floyd's career for your kid every time. Or if you were a trainer or a promoter, you'd want Floyd's career because he's got the most out of the sport. But he's also because he's taken so much out, he hasn't put that much back in. And I think a guy like Pacquiao has, in a way, it goes back to the sort of unreasonableness of us as fans that we demand so much from these guys. But Pacquiao has given so much to the sport, and I think ultimately, as a fan, you want fighters like Pacquiao. But if you actually think about it from the other side, everyone wants to be like Floyd, and that's his legacy, I think. So that's what he meant when he was talking about TBE. He was saying, I've laid out the blueprint for the best life, not just the best boxing record. Sorry, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'm sorry for missing half an hour, lads. This is a phone call I had to take. I might have missed it if it's already been said, but what I don't understand about Pacquiao's comeback is I don't understand what it's for. It's not
Money.
as if it probably is just for money in it. But does he really need the money?
Apparently he does.
Where's his money gone then? I know he gives a lot of it away, but
Well, he lost the Nike deal, didn't he? Which is massive to him.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, with his comments about gay marriage and that, wasn't it?
some of his comments really are not as controversial. But I'm sure he said that petty thieves should have the death penalty.
But they're trying to bring that back in the Philippines at the minute because Press Pass, a crusader for human rights, was talking about it on Twitter the other week.
They're going really authoritarian, like Puritan Christian out there, really.
In the last, I saw this earlier from Reuters, unrelated, but it was in the Philippines. In the last 6 months, since they've had a new regime, there's been 1,800 deaths and murders from a drug war or something. And Pacquiao being a senator, maybe he's got some involvement in that. But yeah, I really struggle to see the motivation for his career. If he was coming back for the money, surely he'd be screaming for the Mayweather rematch, every 5 minutes. Unless he just wants 4 or 5 steady £5 million paydays.
But it's Pacquiao, isn't it? And he's never been one to sort of
true.
go off the script too much and start calling people out.
After every fight, it was always, I'll leave it to my promoter, Bob Harron.
Yeah. And I think genuinely he's one of the few guys where that's not an excuse. I genuinely think that partly that's Asian culture and a kind of deference to management in situations like that extends across East Asian countries. But I do think he's genuinely a guy who will sit down and Aaron will say, I want you to fight this guy. And he'll be like, yeah, I'll do, whatever you think's best. Whereas other fighters, they obviously use it as an excuse to pick preferential fighters. I reckon if Aaron sat down and went, right, I want you to fight Golovkin, Pacquiao would probably shrug his shoulders and say, yeah, all right. What weight are we doing it at? And he'd go with it. I don't think we can ever accuse him of kind of cherry picking.
Do you know, apart from like if Pacquiao fought Khan or Kell Brook, just because they're British, and we have a bit, we can resonate with them a bit more. I don't think there's like a single match in boxing that maybe Crawford. Apart from that, there's not a single match that I'd really want to see Pacquiao win anymore.
Really? I'd love to see him beat up
this is my thing. I don't really care about him anymore, or Floyd. I just want them both to go. I don't care. Just move on.
But there's no one to replace him.
People say, like, oh, well, wouldn't you want to see Floyd and Pacquiao? It's 1 versus 2. And I'm like, but the first one was so shit. I don't care for a second one.
Who's replacing them, Sam? What have we got to look forward to if those two are off the table forever?
What, in the welterweight division? What fights can we look forward to?
Yeah, or that's the fucking glamour division of the sport, isn't it? And who have we got to look forward to? Like
Spence Crawford could be a good fight. Spence Thurman could be a good fight. Porter, Thurman Porter.
These are all untested sort of young prospects.
Well,
like
there's no each other. In an ideal world, they test themselves against each other, but they're not going to.
And then they'd all end up losing 1 or 2, and then we'd be saying, well, they're all shit because they've lost a fight. I really think like people are too eager to sort of discard the true all-time greats like Pacquiao and Floyd, who are both absolute no question sort of top 30 fighters of all time.
Obviously, you're a bit up with the history than me and Cal and that, because you call us casuals and whatnot. But I don't know. Say like when Leonard was retiring, was there calls for him to come back and pass on the torch, or Duran kept going in. Tommy
played about 5 times.
I don't think there was so much. Obviously, I wasn't really. I think I was about 2 when he retired or something. But I think it was because of the injury, Carby, and that they knew that he had like a retina problem, didn't he, or something. I think they knew that it was a very serious injury. Look, if Pacquiao said tomorrow, look, my eyes, I've got a Margarito eye, we'd all say, okay, yeah, have a nice retirement, no problem. I think it's because, like, Floyd could come back in a month and still beat all these guys. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's what's so annoying about it, is that I want to see them keep going, because they could still win, and I think they've still got stuff to offer. I think guys like Leonard retired when they had absolutely nothing left.
But I don't want Floyd to come back to beat Thurman, because then people say Thurman shit. I don't want that to happen. I want Thurman, Porter, Spence to have careers in their own right. I don't want Floyd to come back and just beat all these guys and then everyone's shit again.
I know it's a slightly different conversation, lads, but do we think Floyd Mayweather will come back? Because it's been over a year now, isn't it?
The longer it goes on for, the more likely I think it is.
But I think, if anything, Floyd's the sort of guy where he could literally be off for 3 years and come back and look amazing. And I think in the back of his mind, how long was Leonard off? Was it 4 years or 5 years when he fought Hagler?
4.
Yeah. Floyd will have in the back of his mind, like, he's so kind of competitive and weird in that way. He'll probably be thinking, right, I'm going to do it a day later than Leonard did it, and I'm going to beat his record of being out for the longest and then coming back and winning a belt or whatever it is. And he'll fight someone shite, and he'll try and claim it's as good as coming back and beating Hagler, and all the idiots will buy it and say that Floyd has, had the longest break ever. When he retired to get out of the De La Hoya rematch, like, it was quite obvious that he just didn't want to fight De La Hoya again. I'm not saying he would have lost, just saying he wanted to kind of break away from that. So he retired for a year tactically, and you had people praising it, saying like, oh, he took a year off and he still came back and won, like it was some great achievement. And you just think, like, whatever he does, he's got that army of fans who will spin it into like some sort of record-breaking achievement on his part. Wouldn't surprise me at all if he came back in after 2.5 years, 3 years, and still won pretty easily. But I guess, like you say, Copy, he's what's Floyd now, like 30? Is he
He's
like
38.
38? Yeah.
He might be even 39 now.
Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if in the back of his head he was thinking, I want to beat Hopkins' record of like winning a title when I'm 50 or whatever. and he's got the style to do it, in the same way that I can easily see Andre Ward fighting when he's 40, and continuing to fight, because they just got that style where the black code, as Charles loves to say, where they fight and they just don't take any real damage, and they can keep going, and they don't use themselves up physically like Latino fighters tend to do, or like a lot of Europeans do.
I think Floyd's been quite clever. Do you know if he announced the fight from like now onwards, I think it's been long enough for people to forget how much of a letdown the Pacquiao fight was. I think if he's gonna carry on boxing, it's much smarter to announce it now than it was, say, like 6 months after the Pacquiao fight, because people still there was still that backlash there, wasn't there?
Yeah, it's blown over now, and I think now if he came back, people would be genuinely surprised, wouldn't they? Oh, Floyd's back! Whereas Pacquiao retired for what, like 2 months, and then said, "Yeah, I'm coming back now," and everyone just sort of shrugged their shoulders and went, "Yeah, well." And we've had a year of Floyd saying that he's going to come back and fight the rematch with Pacquiao, and then he said he was going to fight McGregor, and he's saying all this nonsense stuff, and then he's dropping hints that he might fight Danny Garcia and all this other stuff, and I think he's a master of just stringing people along, isn't he? To be honest. But yeah, so we've ended up just slagging Floyd in Brian's absence. I'm just trying to see if we've got any decent questions. Right, I'm going to go through these. We did actually have a couple. First one, Dewey, for you. I can't remember if you said this earlier, but of the fighters you saw in the Olympics, who do you think will make the best pro?
Ooh, that's a good question, isn't it?
I think Stevenson will be a really good pro.
Yeah, I'm going through the weights bottom upwards, and Stevenson and Ramirez really spring to mind.
Is Ramirez turning over?
No, well, he's Cuban, isn't he? But like I say, I do expect him to go missing on an away trip, or to find a rogue fisherman's boat or something.
It's been a while since they did. They're due a desertion. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he's fought in something like 7 consecutive away fixtures in the WSB, and I don't think that's a coincidence. I think they're almost like enabling him to leave. But he's 22. If he did stay amateur, he don't unwanted a third gold, he'd still only be 26, which, if you fast tracked, it's not like it was a couple of years ago, a little while ago, is it? That's still enough time to make an impact.
That was probably, Lara was probably mid-20s, wasn't he, when he defected? And he was, within a couple of years, he was sort of headlining HBO and that. So, yeah, and he's
I think Lara headlined, didn't he, against Paul Williams in like his 12th or 13th fight?
Yeah, he'd only been pro like 18 months or something, yeah. Because he was in his prime. I think he was like 28 or 29 then, like in his physical prime, and he was ready to go. And yeah, like you say, Ramirez he'd be hot to trot if he turned pro. Like they wouldn't need to kind of feed him bums for 2 years.
One fight, just thinking off the top of my head, that has caught me off guard, that question. I think Conchal would make an interesting pro, because I can't think of too many Brazilians as pros. Obviously, Acelino Freitas got a lucky knockout against Barry Jones.
Is it a big enough sport in Brazil to warrant him going pro, or would he have to? He'd obviously have to leave Brazil, wouldn't he?
I haven't got the best knowledge of Brazil, but we all know them for their football, don't we?
And MMA.
And they've obviously just won the Olympics with the football, but I'm not sure they got loads of gold medals. And it was probably the only day that Rio Central Pavilion 6, to channel my inner Ron McIntosh, it was probably the only day that arena was full, was for Conchal against a Frenchman. They didn't get many goals. So I'm sure I saw somewhere on Twitter someone saying that he's signalled his intention to go pro straight away. And if they haven't got many
pros, I think his style would suit.
If they haven't got many professional boxers in Brazil, he could corner that little mini market, couldn't he?
Yeah, and I think there is an appetite, as we've seen with guys like Freitas. Like the Brazilians, it's not as if they totally ignore their boxers. And Conceição is clearly talented enough to do something in the division. Whether it translates completely, but I do think he's awkward. He's swarming, really high energy. And he's what is he a light welter, or I forget?
Lightweight, 60 kilos.
Lightweight. There you go. Perfect. It's a pretty wide open division at the moment. You could see him against the likes of, I don't know, Walters or whatever in a few years' time. And yeah, good addition, I think. I'd like to see as many of them turn over as possible, to be honest. I think that Hrgović will make a really good pro from Croatia. He's the one who smashed David Hay up, isn't he? A couple of years ago.
Yeah, he cut him.
Before the Fury fight, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that Ryan's been saying it on the Asylum as well, that he thinks his style will translate really well to the pros, and he's the one who's been doing the most sparring with professionals and has been sort of immersing himself in that, traveling around, to all over Europe to different camps and sort of experiencing how the pros do it. And I think he'll make the jump really easily, whereas maybe that Yoka will be sort of he'll hang around in France and sort of not really go anywhere.
The American the other American medalist, the light flyweight, I think he was it Nico Hernandez?
Yeah.
I thought he looked really tasty in his early fights, and I think I was trying to recollect because the light flyweight finals were really early. I think he lost to that Martinez.
Yeah, he lost to the Colombian.
Yeah, the crazy Colombian.
Russian, didn't he? He beat the Russian who was the top seed. I forget.
Yeah, I think Hernandez is going to have a lot of offers. I think we all know Stevenson is going to be the one the American promoters want, but whoever loses out to Hernandez is surely got to be their second choice.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And Hernandez looks decent. He could do some stuff. I hate the way the Americans hype their guys, but I think Stevenson could if he's brought along correctly. I'm not sure if Mayweather Promotions is the best place to do that, but I think
he's so young. He's got plenty of time. So.
Yeah. Exactly. There's absolutely no need to rush him. And they can beat him bums for a few years.
I wouldn't expect him to be challenged for world titles in 2 years.
No.
Ideally, I think it'd be best for Stevenson to stay amateur, but the money that's going to be offered to him that's not going to think
he should turn over with Aram. I think Aram's the best by a mile at bringing people along and developing prospects. If I was managing a prospect finishing the Olympics, I'd say go with Top Rank every time. Forget the money. Just think about developing yourself as a sort of main event guy, and especially like you say with Stevenson, who's so young and who has so much time to learn before he could wait 4 years and he'd be still 22. So it's very, very feasible for him to be a world champion by the time he's sort of 21, 22, which is very, very young. He's in a really, really strong position, I think.
I don't think Golden Boy are doing a bad job. I'm just trying to think of the last American squad. Obviously, Spence has done the best out of them. I know there's a few with the PBC like Jamal Heron and Marcus Brown that they've not really impressed us. I thought, was it Denis Saikov kind of exposed Heron, and Marcus Brown, I can't remember what fight it was, but he got a really lucky decision in one of the fights at the Barclays Centre. But
he lost to that Eastern European. Yeah, I forget his name.
He won though, didn't he?
He won, but he lost really. Yeah.
But the Jojo Diaz with Golden Boy, I think, is coming on really well. Good win over Jason Velez, and I know Jason Quigley's not an Olympian, but
Diaz is on the Canelo Smith undercard, I think.
He is.
Yeah, yes.
I think he's coming along really well, Diaz. Not a massive puncher, but they've seemed to have got the balance in his fights between doing rounds and getting stoppages. I think he's like 20-0, maybe like 10 or 11 stoppages. But the other one then would be Jason Quigley for me. I know he's not an Olympian, but a higher level amateur, 2013 World Championship silver medalist. I think they're bringing him along at a really good pace.
I feel like Quigley's being moved very slowly, though. I feel like he hasn't really stepped up in the last year. He doesn't seem to fight that often either.
De La Rosa, didn't he? Which was a very decent win. I know De La Rosa did
a massive step up, and De La Rosa's not that. De La Rosa's a proper gatekeeper.
He was slated to fight. What's his name? Yeah.
Until the move come in like 5 pounds over, I think.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm looking at the. He's actually funny. You say Quigley's at the bottom of the Alvarez Smith card, and on there you've got Diaz against Cancio, who I've no idea who that is. He's lost 2 of his last 5, I see. Diego De La Hoya against Del Valle, decent fight. De La Hoya should win. He's being moved along quite well as well. De La Hoya, another guy. He's not a massive puncher, but he slowly seems to be getting knockouts, and he seems to be developing his technique. And then you've got Quigley versus TBA, and Quigley's 11-0, and I feel like he's been pro for a while.
He's coming up for 3 years.
Yeah, it's over 2 years ago he turned pro, and he's 11-0. I know he's young. Well, actually, he's 25. He's not that young. Today, has he had injuries? I don't know. It seems like he's been moved slowly. And there are no names on his record at all.
My point being, I think we all agree that Top Rank is the best choice for like career development wise. But I don't think Golden Boy would be a bad option. But I definitely wouldn't go with Mayweather. They've
No,
not got the
absolutely
best
not.
track records of building fighters.
No, I agree. And you look at guys like Jay Leon Love and that, not amazing fighters, but guys who were just fed bum after bum after bum, and then got put in with a terrible style and got wiped out. There is no way Bob Arum would, if he'd had Jay Leon Love, would ever have put him in with a guy like Medina. It would never have happened. And
I don't think they wouldn't have made the Rosado fight for Jay Leon Love either, which I think he lost. Obviously,
Rosado knocked him down, didn't he? He had him badly. Yeah. I remember that. I agree with you. I don't think Mayweather. Maybe he's got a new matchmaker now, or maybe Schaefer's going to be involved again. I don't know. I felt like Schaefer was sort of slowly finding his feet as a.
He's going alone.
Sorry, copy.
Schaefer's going alone. He's got his own promoter's license. He's got his own.
He's got some funny name for his
Swiss Bank Promotions.
No, it's something really shit. It's called like Prime Seats or something crap like that. It's a really dumb name, I remember thinking. Right, I'm just looking at some other questions. Okay. Robert Guerrero's fighting this weekend. Do you think he'd be suitable for Spence as a next fight, as a kind of stay busy, or do you think he'll just wait on the IBF until next year?
On paper, it's a name, isn't it, for Spence? But I'm not sure he needs any more of these building fights.
He wouldn't learn anything, would he?
He'll maybe have to take one in the interim because Cal Brook's going to get knocked out in October, and then probably Dick. I think the mandatory's due in December, so Brook's probably not going to vacate there until November 31st.
Yeah, I think Spence might have to do a Callum Smith and just sort of twiddle his thumbs for 6 months.
It's a very low risk fight, isn't it, Guerrero? I think we all agree that he's a bit long in the tooth now. And he would.
What's the guy that he'd beat, but he could actually learn something from? I'm not sure. Maybe a guy like Berto. At least he's got fast hands, I suppose.
That's a tough question. I just think of the PBC. So, has he seen Lopez maybe, or is that a stupid suggestion?
Well, Lopez hasn't. I don't think he's. Bloody hell! Let me Google box record him. I don't know if he's fought since he got knocked out.
He's kind of past the point there where he needs gimmies.
Yeah, and you just know Lopez hasn't fought in almost 18 months. I don't know if he's still active. Maybe that guy. I was going to say that guy Hernandez. Martinez. You know, the one who beat Guerrero and then beat Alexander
as well. Well, there's
Aaron Martinez.
Yeah, Aaron Martinez, but he was awful in his last fight. I can't remember who it was against, but he was. Sammy Vasquez he fought, and he got knocked out in like 4 rounds. He was so bad. But maybe. I mean, he's sort of durable. He's tough. I don't know. It's a weird one.
Speaking of Sammy Vasquez, obviously Felix Diaz got a good win over Vasquez, didn't he? And Diaz has already got 1 loss in his record. Controversial, I know, against Peterson, but I think we'd agree that Spence is probably a bit sharper than Peterson at the moment. I'm very sure he would take it because it's a chance to crash a mandatory, and he's not protecting an unbeaten record. I wouldn't be surprised if Heyman looked at that David Avanesian, who beat Shane Mosley in his mandatory for Thurman. Thurman probably would beat him, but in my opinion, that's a closer fight than if Avanesian fought Spence.
Just seen interestingly on Sky Bet that Brook has opened as the slight favourite against Spence if that happens before the end of the year. So that might be worth a bet if it does get made, although can't see it happening. Right, okay, that was the question. Then we had what was the other one? We had someone asked me, "Are you going to address my question from last week?" That was another question that we had. The answer is no. Then we had, what did Brian do to get kicked off Twitter?
Insulted Israel.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Who was he talking to about Israel?
Some Jew.
Some Jew. Okay, thanks for that.
I can't remember his name.
I thought it was because he was fighting with Lukey.
No, it was something. Well, it could be that as well, but I think it was a Jewish bloke he was arguing with, like Palestine.
Okay.
It was some Israeli who was searching for Israel or pro-Palestinian stuff on Twitter.
Oh, right. And he searched, he tracked down.
I think Brian tweeted that Celtic Park reeked of Jew
Oh, right.
because they played some Jewish team, don't they?
Anyway, lads,
always a good idea to repeat what the guy said that got him banned.
since you're searching for a question, boys, I'm just going to pitch something to you. Is this an easy £100? Golovkin to stop Karl Brook in rounds 1 to 6, and then if you put £25 on that, you'll get 50 back, and then £50 on Usyk to beat Glowacki by any method to 8 to 15. That gives you 76, and then Alvarez to stop Liam Smith. If you put the 76 on that, will give you £106.
So what could you? I think maybe a cheeky accumulator on those three. A Yankee on the three might be a good bet. I can't tell with the Brook fight because I really do think Brook might just run and try and do a Martin Murray and say, oh well, going the distance is a victory. You know.
He's not going to be as tough as Martin Murray is. Not up that weight anyway.
No, but he can move a lot better than Martin Murray can. So I don't know.
Will he at 160?
Yeah. How much? Yeah, actually, that's a good. How much do we think Brook will come in at? That's a good. Will he be sort of 155 or something?
Bang on the limit, I think. Like Khan did against Canelo. I think they tried to make a point, and they have an extra Weetabix that morning.
Yeah.
To not give anything away.
It's amazing how quick this narrative's changed. I've just seen a video. They've just posted an interview with Paulie saying that he doesn't think Brook will ever fight at 147 again. And now I'm seeing so many comments saying, oh, he always struggled to make the weight. You know, he's outgrown the division. Oh, it's ridiculous. The narrative's in full swing. Yeah, and isn't he still like, he's still like 10 pounds over, isn't he? Like 4 weeks.
176 last week.
Yeah, ridiculous. I don't get it. I don't know what does he walk around at? He must walk around at like 190 or something.
Well, he's a super middleweight, really. He's boiling down to middleweight.
Yeah, I mean, he's a bit like Porter. They're 154 pounders who can somehow drop all that water and get down to 147.
It's just nuts, isn't it? Imagine if Ricky Hatton ballooning up to like 190, 200 pounds in between fights. People nowadays are saying, "Oh, he's not a welterweight; he's actually a cruiserweight."
They would have been making excuses for him, wouldn't they? I remember. I swear, like 10 years ago, the media, when they reported on boxing, would say sort of, you know, Hatton's being stupid. It's his own fault being irresponsible. And now we just make excuses for guys cutting ridiculous amounts of weight.
But you know what? There are new methods around now, though, aren't there? Because I won't name them, but I know of a lot of fighters who will drink. For example, they'll drink 10 liters of water a day. That's a liter of water weighs 2 pounds. That's 20 pounds of water in their body a day, on top of what their body naturally carries as well. So what they do the day before the weigh, 2 days before the weigh, and they stop drinking. The day before the weigh, and they'll have a hot bath, and they can lose half a stone just like that.
Yeah. So what? So you mean that they're walking around at an artificial weight anyway?
Almost, yeah. But it does ensure then that after the weigh-in, you can rehydrate because your body's lost so much water. It's thinking, oh my God, where's this water? And it'll retain it very easily. Whereas fighters who keep their weight right down in a whole camp, for example, like Carl Froch, I guarantee Carl Froch will put on next to nothing after he weighs in because his
Froch was a guy that
low down.
I remember Froch saying that even sort of when he didn't have a fight scheduled, he'd only be about 180 walking around the street. Like he hardly cut anything, just 10 pounds, nice and easy, like Bellew. Bellew's in shape 24/7, 365. We've got one more question actually, just come in, the same one again that we had earlier. I don't know too much about this, so if either of you guys can fill me in. Apparently, the next AJ fight is not going to be at the O2.
Yeah, John Inverdale kind of awkwardly gave that away. You could tell he'd been told off the record, and obviously, more importantly, off camera. And then I don't think he kind of gets that in boxing you can find things out, and sometimes you've got to play ball and not preempt a release thing. And I think the main point journalists have to work like that in boxing is because it can drive purses up for promoters.
Yeah.
If like fighter X is fighting fighter Y, and it's not yet agreed, but everyone knows fighter Y is interested in the fight, he's going to ask for more money because the promoter will be under pressure to make that fight by then. So don't get, obviously there was no opponent mentioned, but John Inverdale definitely wasn't used to, being told something slightly off record, and he kind of opened or closed rather the conversation with, "Oh well, November 26th or whatever it is, you're fighting," and Joshua had to, kind of not say anything but say something.
Yeah, it's a strange one. I mean, you'd think maybe they're going to take it to Liverpool, or maybe or the MEN, I suppose. But it just.
Well, he's got that Showtime deal, isn't he? So.
Oh, so you think it could be?
It could. Yeah. I don't know anything at all, but it could be, couldn't it?
Yeah. I mean, that wouldn't actually be that stupid a move if he had a fight in like New York or something.
Well, it depends who it is, doesn't it? If it's Pulev, then they probably won't take it abroad.
Still doing they would.
You could fight some bummy American, and it would probably draw a crowd because.
Well, Stavern's fighting Povetkin, mate.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Andy Ruiz. There you go. Ruiz ices him.
Maybe Manchester. They might take him on a tour.
I think the Liverpool thing might make sense if they stick Price on the undercard or something like that.
Well, Quigg's back in November, isn't he? So they might do it in Manchester and have Quigg chief support against someone.
I don't think Joshua's ever.
As a pay-per-view, then, couldn't they?
Has Joshua ever fought at the MEN?
Yeah, he definitely would have done when he was a prospect, right? Must have done on like a crawler undercard or something.
Frochgrove's one.
No, I think he had his back injury.
One. There you go. Yeah.
Was that it? Was he on there?
He's fought all over.
No, I don't think. No, just looking at his record, he hasn't.
Well, but he's fought in Liverpool, hasn't he? He's fought in Newcastle.
He's fought in all the places when he was saving shows. So he fought in Newcastle.
Yeah.
Birmingham.
And he fought. Yeah, he fought in Leeds, didn't he? I think maybe. Might be wrong about that.
No, he didn't fight in Leeds, but he's fought like Liverpool. Oh, sorry, he did fight in Manchester against Konstantin Erich.
Okay.
What card was that?
I'm just loading it now.
He didn't fight in Bristol because the card was already so stacked.
Oh yeah.
Right.
All Sanagar's boys, mate.
Glenn Catley.
It was Crawler against Gamaliel Diaz when it was a technical draw, wasn't it, with a head clash?
I didn't remember that.
What a great fight that was.
Quigg against Jamoy.
Oh, I remember that fight.
Eggington Vassell. Not an awful show.
Yeah, Eggington Vassell. Yeah. I remember that one. That could quite fuck me off. That's basically it for the questions. I mean, it's pretty thin on the ground, and there's really not a lot. I'll just read out the fights from this weekend, just to interrupt me if there's anything you want to talk about. We've got fucking hell, this is thin on the ground. I'm trying to remember who these guys are. We've got Miguel Mariaga. Do you remember that guy who fought Walters about a year ago? He's fighting in Nevada but not in Vegas at a fairground on the Saturday. Yep, he's fighting some guy who I've never heard of. You've got Guerrero against a guy called Peralta, who I presume is South American, on the Saturday. And then you've got Alfredo in the battle of guys who were relevant in 2009. You've got Alfredo Angulo versus Freddy Hernandez as the co-main. That might be quite fun because those guys are both so dangerously past their best. Like they're Angulo looks so bad now, and his speech is terrible. And I think that Kirkland fight really, that was his prime, getting beaten.
Angulo.
Yeah, Alfredo Angulo. Yeah.
Christ.
Still around. Yeah. Against that Hernandez, who was getting iced in around by Berto, 6-7 years ago. So you know what level he's at.
Hernandez win a goal or someone.
Sorry, do we say it again? You broke up.
Hernandez come back and have a good win over Collazo or someone like that.
Yeah, he beat Collazo, but that was years ago. That was like 8 years ago or something. Long time. There's really fuck all on, to be honest. I mean, we'll wrap it up unless there's anything else you want to talk about, mate.
Oh, it's Joseph Abeko, who.
Oh, really?
Remember, yeah, he's fighting Haji Juma, and if you don't remember the name, that's the person who Andrew Selby fought in his debut.
Right, great. I thought Abeko had retired or something.
It's not in the prison canteen thing. It is in the police officers' social and fitness centre in Ghana.
Is right? So, he's had one fight since the Rigo loss. So he basically didn't fight for a year and a half, and now he's been inactive But he's got 2 fights scheduled. Okay, so this will be his second fight in almost 3 years. So he's how old is Agbeko now? 35. Okay, so he's on the way out.
45.
Shame. He's good fighter in his day, Agbeko. But yeah. Oh, for fuck's sake! They're sharing videos of police murders in the WhatsApp chat. It's all going off. I think I might need to go and. Brian's been sharing some nasty videos. Right. So yeah. So any concerned listeners, just to sign off, Brian is alive and well. He's just being questioned by the police for hate crimes. Hopefully the suspension will be temporary and he'll be back soon. And we'll be back next week. We'll try and get a guest on or something because there's might try and get Charles Farrell back in the next couple of weeks. We actually did have a show scheduled with him about 10 days ago, I think, but then we had to cancel for some reason. But we'll get him back at some point. And there might be a fighter or two that we might be able to get on with the Paddy Barnes connection. Because there's really not a lot to talk about until September, and then when's Brook and Golovkin? Is that the 10th?
September 10th.
10th. There you go. So I mean that's the next big one, really. I don't think HBO have got a single card scheduled for about the next 3 weeks. So there's fuck all to talk about. But we'll manage it somehow.
There's another big fight on the weekend in Tanzania. Kasim Uma is fighting. If you remember Kasim Uma, I'm very sure he fought Golovkin early in his career. And he survived Joseph Kony's child army things in Congo. Yeah.
And the opponent is TBA.
Yeah.
Although, actually, funnily enough, Uma fought this past weekend. He fought 3 days ago. He's got another one. That can't be. He fought in Poland at the weekend, and he's got another fight on Saturday.
I'm just looking at the BoxRec schedule. There are some. Do you know, like the sort of road sweepers of boxing that are left, like Rod Salka's fighting this weekend is a real throwback to fighters that we really don't want to remember.
Yeah, it's a real fallow period, isn't it? August. There's just absolutely nothing on.
Tommy Carpenter's brother's fighting. If anyone's interested, lost his last fight to someone who's no wins, no losses, and 2 draws.
Nice. I don't mind Carpenter. I've always quite liked him. He seems like a sort of honest pro. But yeah, so we'll try and get a guest on for next week. Send us in any questions or any debate. You know, we'll get a stupid debate going with Rocco or something. And in the meantime, I just want to say an active pod piece. I'm really enjoying the Punches from the Past segment on the Boxing Asylum, which is where they do, a recap of a fight from sort of 10, 15 years ago. It's very good. If you haven't checked it out, I recommend it. I think they did Klitschko against Lewis was the one from today, which is well worth a listen. But anyway, cheers, Dewey, and we'll be back next week. Cheers, everyone.
Bye.